That was me closing the door, but yes, go. I'm ready.
Going live.
Going live. Here we go. Talk
Here
about
we
a movie.
Let's
What a
talk
time.
about it. What a time this was.
Yeah. This is definitely one of the more interesting movie-going experiences I've had recently. Um,
Hello, everyone.
and look at that, we're live. Hello, everyone in chat. How's everybody doing? I hope you're having a fine Sunday. I hope you're
I hope your balls
relaxing.
are happy for this Super Bowl day.
Yeah, Super Bowl. That you can't call it the other thing. You gotta call it Super Bowl because the other one's trademarked. The big game, the big ball. Yeah, today we're gonna have a little chat about a new movie. Not a lot of people. I haven't seen a lot of people talking about it. It just came out. It's kind of a
Very recent.
smaller, low budget horror picture. Just came out in theaters here. Curiously, it's listed as a 2022 movie if you Google it.
Oh,
I
really?
think that's because that's when it uh, went to film festivals. And then it must have struggled to get distribution for a while because
Hmm.
it's only now getting a theatrical release, at least in America. This is a British film or a Scottish film, one of those two. And yeah, so it's listed as 2022, but at least in America, it just came out this week. So we went to see it. It is a Stone Age survivalist horror film, a Paleolithic period piece thriller, whatever you want to call
Wow.
it.
Hey, that sounds pretty fantastic, actually. What a
A neat little
brilliantly
premise.
simple premise, you know?
Yeah, people in Stone Age times fighting against some unknown force that is like stalking them at night and following them, and they have to survive in this,
Barren,
trying landscape. Yeah, and they have to fight off, ford
an
off, like ward
unfamiliar
off some,
land with
yeah, some
nothing
sort of
but
monster.
pointy sticks and
Yeah.
rocks and the brain of a hunter gatherer. You know?
Yes, it's an interesting premise. I've been saying for a long time that I'd love to see more period piece horror movies. They don't all have to be this old, obviously, but this is a welcome surprise that someone would make a movie like this. I'm very interested in this premise. I'm very interested in this type of movie. I'm a big fan of The Witch and other older horror movies set in different time periods. And so I was relatively excited for this movie. All I really knew about it going into it is that I had seen a trailer. That's it. I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh, that's an interesting trailer." If my main concern was that it was going to be a little try hard artsy based on the trailer. It had, like it was really going for A24 vibes. This is not an A24 movie, but the trailer was very much trying to invoke that sort of feeling and
Yeah, well, it is a
vibe.
Bleecker Street movie, and they've done a couple of like indie art house things,
Yeah,
right?
I'm
They're
familiar
kind of
with
like
the
the
name, but I don't know a whole lot about them and like what they've made. Bleecker Street. Our movies. Let's see, they did Waitress the Musical, ISS. Oh, ISS was that really shitty looking like
that was that space
International
station
Space
one,
Station
right?
movie. Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, that didn't look very
yeah.
good. I didn't bother with that one.
I feel
But they
like
did
I've
One
not.
Life, which is that new. It's that Anthony Hopkins movie that our British friends like Muller and Drinker have recommended, but is not available to watch in America and won't be for a while. I don't know why, but I'm looking forward to that. That's a Bleecker Street movie.
Oh, they. Oh, yes. Okay, they did make Mafia Mama with Tony Collette.
Oh
Uh,
God, it looks so bad. I remember that trailer. Mafia Mama. Hello, all my O words. Yes, thank you. How's everybody doing? Donald's Angry says, hello, 1107 days since Dev's episode 3. Yeah, look at that number going up. The bigger the number, the higher the score, right? That's how it goes.
yeah, I think that's pretty much it. Like YouTube, from what I understand, is much like golf. The lower the number, the more successful you are when it comes to videos listed on your channel. So,
Yeah, so this is a movie. It's
oh,
called Out of Darkness.
they made the Art of Self Defense. That's one that I can say is actually kind of worth watching. Bleecker Street film, Art of Self Defense. It's quite dry. Very Jesse Eisenberg in a very good role for Jesse Eisenberg.
Yeah, you've told me about that movie, but I still haven't checked it out. Anywho, this movie, Out of Darkness, follows a small. It's not really a full tribe. It's like, oh God, how many people is it? Is it like six?
Okay, well, let's we can jump
We'll
right
count
in
them.
and start breaking down some of the character. We got
Yeah, go
leader.
ahead.
We got a leader.
Leader
Um,
man, who's so I before we break it down, I just want to get the general premise out, and then we're gonna give what we thought about the movie. In case there's anyone in the chat, I've seen a couple people be like, "Oh, I haven't even heard of this movie." So we'll give the basic gist, and then we'll say whether we recommend it or not. So because we are gonna spoil this movie, we're gonna talk about all the ins and outs. So the
mhm.
basic premise is that a band, not quite a tribe, a band of Paleolithic Stone Age people arrive in a new land, and they're trying to make a home for themselves and get to like a mountain that will have some caves that they can live in and such that sort of thing. And some sort of mysterious creature, monster, force is out there in the woods,
Who
picking them off one by one.
knows?
We don't know quite what's going on, and they have to survive and all that sort of stuff. That's the basic gist. Very simple premise, very good, solid foundation for a horror film, I would say.
Yeah, I would
You
agree.
would you recommend this movie? Do you think people who are like, "Oh, never heard of this. Maybe I'll go check it out." Should they go check it out?
Absolutely fucking not. Oh my god. What a wet fart of a waste of a premise. Oh wow. Terrible. That was uh that was rough. That was a rough watch. I gotta admit, and it of course they ruin it at the end, completely. Uh, so yeah, there you go. No, I would not recommend it. It's not worth your time. It's only an hour and 46 minutes. It does not feel like that. It feels like much longer, and it is not worth it.
Yes. I would also never recommend this movie to anybody unless you want to, profit from a bad example, as they say. If you want to see how not to do this premise, this might
Watch
be a
this.
good
Yeah.
movie to check out. Otherwise, I think it's awful. I think it's awful in a myriad of ways that many movies are only awful in a few. And this one seems to be awful in a number of ways all at once. Um, it's for most of the movie, it's very slow and boring and dull. And then eventually it arrives at the twist, and it's awful. It's one of the worst twists I've ever seen in a movie. I hated the twist in this movie, especially because nothing that came before it was particularly worthwhile. Um, I hate the way this movie is shot. I hate the way this movie is edited. The music is also very annoying and insistent.
The music is really strange. Yeah, I'm not a huge fan of that. I did not care for a lot of the camera work, and I want to just point out that the camera work and the sound design are used in a way that is deliberately deceptive for some, like, basically in order to try to make it seem like they did a good job when they really, really did not. Like,
Yeah.
it actively annoying. It made me quite angry when certain things were happening.
Yes. I didn't think the acting was especially strong. I wouldn't call it
It's not
bad. I didn't
bad, but it's not
know,
like
but it's not
it's not a,
good.
it's not a saving grace, that's for sure.
The dialogue isn't good. The characters aren't good. Like I said, the twist is one of the worst things I've ever seen.
The use
It's
of
a
the
bad
premise
movie.
is quite underwhelming. Like you would think that if you were going to do a period piece like this, you might, I don't know, put in some research maybe. Um, attempt to accurately get into the mind of a group of people who literally hunts for, survival. That's like literally all they know. You might, I don't know, try a little bit to do something like that instead of just having them make the same basic retarded horror movie character decisions that
Over and over and
over
over
and over and over again.
for an hour
Yeah.
and a half. Yeah. This is a bad movie, and I don't recommend you go see it. I do recommend you hang out and listen to us rant about it because there's a lot to say. Um, so I hope you enjoy. Let's get into it. This movie follows,
Well, yeah,
like
we
I
can
said,
we can get the band together, right? Like, so we've got Leader Man,
Leader Man.
Adam. His
Oh,
name's Adam.
his name is like Adam. It's Adem. So I think it'll be
Adem.
important for people to know in the audience that this is a movie written in a fictional language. a hypothetical language for these Paleolithic people, and it has English subtitles, or whatever language you do speak. They're not speaking English; they're speaking a made-up language invented for the film. I think there's something.
Props for that. Honestly, that was
Yeah,
pretty. That's an
there's something.
interesting thing. You
It's an
know,
interesting choice, and there's something commendable about the effort. I wish they gave a shit about any of the other aspects of the movie. They speak an invented language, so there are pros and cons to that. If this were a better film all around, I would definitely commend it for feeling for going for an authenticity, right? You don't have to get past the fact that they're speaking English. Maybe that would allow you to really feel more compelled by the characters and their dialogue and stuff like that. But as it is, it has an authenticity that they speak this. Obviously, it's invented, but it feels as much as it can like a language that they might have actually spoken. I don't know. It
yeah,
feels.
it gave me some Apocalypto vibes a little bit. Although I'm not sure if Apocalypto's language is entirely made up. I would assume that it is, but Apocalypto has that sort of sense to it as well, where
Mhm.
like the language is not English, and it really helps to sort of sell the immersion at the beginning for sure. In this movie, in Apocalypto, it works pretty much the whole way through, but this one, it helps to sell the immersion a little bit, and it is commendable that they decided to go with that as opposed to just doing an English language thing.
Oh yeah,
It's a
here's
nice
the
touch.
thing I would say though, because they didn't really do anything else that would add to the authenticity, I almost wish they just spoke in English.
Yeah,
So,
well, that's yeah.
so here's some of those examples. None of these people look like Stone Age people do. I mean, if you know anything about, archaeology and, the history of human peoples, you know that people from the Stone Age didn't quite look like this. They looked a bit more like the caveman from the Geico commercials, right? Which is something they could have done. They could have used makeup and prosthetics
Wow.
to do that if they wanted to, but they decided not to. They just wanted to cast modern people who look very much like modern people, I would add. I mean,
But
it's
I
it's
that
it's tough to find anyone these days that has the facial structure of a Stone Age person, but they made no attempt to. And so that's
well,
one thing that they didn't bother doing at all.
they did do a
Um,
little of that. I would say they
well,
there is a
let's not
reason for
spoil it.
why
We'll
we've
get to
done
it.
this, but we'll get to that.
Yeah, a bad reason. So they they speak in this made up, Stone Age language, but none of them look like they're in the Stone Age. And the other thing that I would say is more important to me in terms of my immersion and believing that these are peoples from, I believe it's 45,000 years ago,
Yes, that is the number
43,000,
they give.
something like that.
45.
Yeah.
45,000 years ago.
Yeah, so a bigger barrier to my immersion is the fact that the way they talk, not the language they're speaking, but the way they speak and the words they use doesn't feel like it's 43,000 years old. You would expect, or I would expect anyway, that their use of language and the way they use words and the type of words they use and the sophistication would be less sophisticated than our language now, right? And I
Hmm.
didn't feel like they nailed that at all. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not expecting them to, for example, the other extreme might be like, ooh, ugh, hungry, ugh, demon, scary, like,
We
I'm not
go big
expecting
hill.
we go big hill. I'm not expecting that, but honestly,
Need eat.
something in between. I didn't feel like they nailed that at all. I didn't feel like they nailed the slightly more primitive way of speaking. I felt like when I'm just reading the subtitles in the bottom of the screen, I'm like, this feels way too modern. They're not using modern slang or anything, but I,
Yeah,
I don't
no,
know. It
there's
just it,
no, rizzing or anything like that going on. We're okay with,
yeah,
it's
they're not saying no cap for real or anything dumb
yeah.
like that.
They are now. I would say that one of the problems that I have, immersion wise, with the way that they've set everything up, is that they use a lot of this art style and like the design choices more just as that, like as cool design choices. For example, one of the characters that they bring along is perhaps a shaman. some kind of wizard type who brings the wisdom of the tribe, but we never get to see
He's just
him.
older. He's not really like a
Yeah.
wizard or a
Well,
shaman
he's
or like a
he's the
healer.
wizard who determines that it's a demon, and there must be a way to pacify like a demon at some point. And then they've got a spear that is different from their other spears that has runes and designs and things carved into it. But they make really no mention of the fact that I mean, human beings are a particularly superstitious lot, and
Oh, I
human
have a lot to
beings
say about that. Yeah.
in this era would have been more so. But really, they use the superstition as nothing more than a cool design for something that doesn't really matter. Um,
Yeah.
and I think that that really falls kind of short. They had an opportunity to do some, representation of what a magical or religious, you know, animistic religious process might look like for
Yeah.
these people, and they just completely decided to ignore it.
Yeah, no, I don't think in terms of not just the way they talk, but in terms of their behavior and their actions and their motivations, I do not think they nailed it at all.
No.
I don't believe them as it just looked like a shitty stage play a lot of the time. Like they're wearing furs and stuff like that, and they're dirty. But otherwise, they just look like modern people LARPing. It's the choices they make, especially when it comes to the superstitious element. Because people 45,000 years ago behaved quite differently from modern people. Modern like Western secular people. There's a part that really annoyed me. We'll
We'll
talk
get
more
to it,
about
yeah.
it in detail, but there's a part where one of the characters posits that this force, this thing out there in the shadows, is a demon. And our main leader guy goes, "There's no such thing as demons." I'm like, bullshit.
Bullshit he
You
would ever have said that.
all of you believe in demons. All of you do. You know what I mean? Like all of you believe if you don't, that's how it's translated
this
in the
is
subtitles.
this
But
is
for
one
whatever, monster, like that sort of thing, all of you believe in demons. That's so stupid.
this
Why
is
would
one of those
anyone say that?
interesting things, right? Because like the only reason to have a spear that is white made of a different kind of either wood or bone,
Yeah.
and then carved with runes and everything like that is very likely in this case. Like, you can see sort of a little bit of evidence of this in modern people in how sports players treat like their favorite baseball bat or their favorite
Yeah.
hockey stick. Like you tape it in a certain way, or you tap it 3 times in a certain way to get the luck out of it, that kind of thing. Like this is a
Yeah.
primitive version of that. You're carving runes into the spear because these runes are going to make it magic, and that will help you to move forward. Like, and we know that that's not true, right? But they don't.
Yeah.
They should not know that. They should not be aware of this. They should believe that with their entire being, essentially,
The
because
other
that's
thing,
sort of
yeah,
how that goes, right?
yeah. There's a lot of things they don't get right about their sort of like worldview and spiritual practice and belief and that sort of thing. They just ignore or use as like a skin. Um,
Hmm.
Yes, but we have Leader Man named Adam, a variant of Adam, essentially. We have
His wife, who's pregnant,
his
whose name is
wife.
Ava or Ave, so
Yeah,
Eve, basically.
yeah, they're not subtle.
Which
Um,
not subtle, and I just like so I'm gonna draw like a little bit of a yeah, issue here with this. Take issue with that a little bit. Um, are we really trying to get like at the idea that this is the biblical, like the origin of the biblical Adam and Eve? And if so, then like
no, I
where
don't
are
think
they?
so.
Are they in
I
like
don't.
Northern Europe? Are we claiming that the Bible was like came out
I,
of Northern Europe and not the desert? Like what is happening?
that would have been really funny if that's what they actually intended to do. I think it's just like, aren't we being clever with our symbolism? That's all it is.
We'll switch
You
to
know.
the theater background. I'll get we'll get in there and we'll start watching. We'll get in.
Oh, we'll get in there and start watching this movie. That way, people can see the trailer and they can see what this movie
See what
looks like.
fooled
Yeah,
us into going to see this.
yeah. So this is. We'll get back to the characters in a second, but this is a group of people who have left their original tribe and they have come. They have gone west and they have apparently crossed the English Channel from France or Germany or Belgium or wherever, um, and they have come to the British Isles to make you know
Make a new
to
life for
claim.
themselves. Yes.
Yeah, it's I
It's
don't know if you remember the exact lines about why they left. I know there's a disagreement about whether they should go south or whether they should come to these isles at all. But basically, this group of people is not really a full tribe. It's a little splintered off group that left a bigger tribe to come, you know, claim the British Isles and make a life for themselves here because they think there's probably promise in these lands. And they find it as sort of a barren landscape, or at least a lot of it is anyway. Very little to hunt or eat. Obviously, these aren't farmers, so they're just hunter gatherers, but they find little vegetation and fruits and stuff to eat. And so it's like, uh-oh, this probably wasn't a good idea, or at least not a good idea with such a small group of people anyway. I would have probably liked this movie a little bit more, all else the same, if this was like a full tribe instead of just like
a
six or
small
however many
warrior band.
people.
Yeah. So there's Adam, Eve,
Yes.
Shaman Man. Oh, and Adam's son.
I don't even feel like calling him Shaman Man. That feels like giving the movie way too much credit.
Is
He's
it
just old man.
old. Yeah, I mean, he doesn't exist really except to be an antagonist. For later on, he'd like to
Yeah,
be the
he's not like a
naysayer.
healer. He's not a shaman. He's not the guy giving wisdom. He's just this was his idea, but he's kind of shape honestly. So this is, I understand why he should be that age, but to drive the point home that he's as useless physically as the movie presents him to be, you need to cast an older person. I'm sorry.
Yeah, well,
Because
there's
he just
no.
looks like he looks like he doesn't want to do anything. Honestly,
Yeah,
he's got some gray hair, but he looks like an actor who's old. He's still got some vitality in him. Anyway, he is old man who complains a lot and doesn't really do anything.
yeah. So we've got those three. Then we've got young, like teenage hunter.
Yes,
We've got Adam's son. So that brings us to five, and then we've got Stray.
yes.
Who? Yeah. So there's
Who
six.
turns
There's
out to
six
be the
people.
main character.
Yeah.
There's six people, and so you don't get any of the sort of like, oh, see how a tribe from this time lived or anything, because it's such a small group of people. Also, it just makes the whole mission seem way more stupid. You know what I mean? Because they have two able-bodied men. One, who's like in his prime, so to speak, and
Yeah.
strong, and he's the leader. And then there's a kid who's like
Like
maybe, I
in
don't know,
training.
15.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
a 15, 16-year-old, a teenager in training. There is
And
a
they have a pregnant
stray
woman
girl
and a
who,
stray
like,
girl they don't really like for some reason.
well, because she's, just there to be useful. It's for whatever they need. They have a pregnant woman who, is far enough along that this is going to be a
A
significant
hindrance?
problem.
Yeah.
A child and an old man who, for some reason, they all consider him too frail to be useful, but he really shouldn't be, given
Yeah.
what we see. So you start to wonder immediately when you see this little ragtag group sitting around the fire in the opening scene.
You cut off, at least for me. You start to wonder what?
You start to wonder immediately as you watch this little ragtag group along, sitting around the fire at the opening scene, that what the fuck the plan is here. Um,
Yeah. No, absolutely. It's
you've
not a
brought
great
six
plan.
people to a brand new land that, like, this is beyond, well before the age of cartography, right? Like, we're not making a
Yeah, they
lot
don't
of.
know anything about these lands. Obviously, they're taking a big risk, but it's such a small group. And like, do you remember why they say they don't just stick with the rest of the tribe when they go south?
I no, I don't remember them
It
say.
was it was a flimsy reason given, but I don't remember it exactly.
It's just something about how, like, it had that feeling, like, from that show Vikings, where the in Vikings, they basically, like, are constantly raiding east and going into Russia, but one man has the idea to head west instead because he has a hunch that maybe there's something good over there that for the getting, and so they do that instead. That's sort of what it
Mhm.
felt like here for me, is that, like, oh well, I'm tired of just constantly going south. I want to go explore, which
Okay,
is sure,
dumbass.
man. Like, I don't know why, like, It does not make a lot of sense. There's not really a strong reason given for why this character is like that, and he doesn't
Yeah.
become a risk taker. Like they don't
No.
establish him, or they
No,
establish him
that's a really good
early
point.
here as like a risk taker, right? Who's like left the comfort of
Comfort of
his
the
tribe
tribe. Yeah.
to go off into the wilderness, and he's convinced a small band to come with him and stake out on this claim and find a new territory to call their own. And then
You keep cutting out for me. I don't know what's going on.
I, I,
I don't know
I
if the stream is hearing you, but you keep cutting out. Not sure what it is.
yeah, I don't know, man.
Let's
I'll go back and go back a little bit. But so basically,
establish him as a risk
yeah, they
taker who's going
establish
to
him as
kill these people. Yeah,
a
but
risk
then
taker.
later on in the movie, he's not ever taking real risks. He seems more like I don't know. It doesn't seem to follow on from how we've established him. But
Yeah,
everyone else can hear you fine. I think I don't know. It must be an internet
yeah,
thing.
maybe it's just a Discord thing.
Discord.
Uh,
Anyway, continue.
yeah. So, well, I mean, that's basically it, right? It's like they establish him as this guy who's bold and willing to take risks and set out over the unknown sea into a land that he's not even sure exists, right? And
Mhm.
then we get there and he's super cautious, and like you don't really have a sense of how on earth this guy convinced the rest of these people to come with him.
He's not charming or charismatic, really.
No, and he doesn't seem competent. Like he doesn't seem like he knows what he's doing.
No, he
Um,
seems like an asshole later in the movie, especially.
yeah, there's
Yeah, so we have this 6 people who have come on their own with no other real plans to this land that they have no idea what's here, based on the assumption that they'll just find a way to make it work. And it doesn't work out for them. Oops. So they come here and they're lighting fires at night and they're just camping around and like they don't have anything to eat. They're
yeah,
not
they
doing
lost all their supplies in the crossing over, because crossing the English Channel in a boat, let alone in a Stone Age boat, like it's a fucking difficult thing to do.
yes.
The North Sea is a notoriously dangerous speck of ocean there. It's
Yeah.
not like you're gonna make it in a easy like.
So they have nothing to eat. They don't really have a plan. They're just like, "Oh, we're here now." And one thing that annoyed me about this movie is we don't even really get to see them doing the work of surviving in this place. You know what I mean? Like,
Oh
okay,
yeah,
we see scenes with them around a campfire, but they're just like sitting there talking nothing important really at all. We don't even see them build a fire.
we don't see
You know what
them
I mean?
build a fire. We don't see them go looking for fresh water. They're like they talk about
Yeah,
food, right? But I'm sitting there like, okay, well, if we're doing like a don't starve thing, right? Like
water.
if we've got to
Yeah,
survive, water is the first thing, right? You can go for a few days without food, but if you don't have fresh water, you're gonna die. So
yeah,
like they don't show them going and looking for it anywhere. They don't show you them build it like scrounging for tinder or things to build the fires. Just all of a
yeah.
sudden when they need it, a fire, pops out of nowhere and now they're sitting
Yeah.
around it.
And it's not that it doesn't make sense that they did that that they built a fire. It's just like I mean, if we're gonna watch people, if part of the horror of this movie is like, man, the elements and they don't have a lot on their side and this is not a great landscape for them and everything, then then show them doing this stuff. Show them build a fire. Like I want to see how these people live and survive. That's part of the whole point of watching a movie like this. I mean, I watched just recently, happened to watch two Mads Mikkelsen movies that both did a way better job of showing what it's like to sort of survive in the elements. One of them is a new movie that came out called Promised Land, which you haven't seen yet, so I won't spoil it for you. I do recommend you go see it, and anyone
Okay.
else listening, I think it's pretty good. Um, but the premise of that movie is that he's trying to cultivate the heath, which is a rather barren landscape, not unlike the one in this movie, that is notoriously uncultivatable, if you will. He's trying to like grow crops there and stuff like so. He's surviving out on the frontier on his own, essentially, or with a couple people to help him. And we really get a sense of just how rough that is and all the work you have to do. and we see the process and we see people doing things, and it's really strong in that regard. The other one is a movie called Arctic, which came out, I don't know, a few years ago. Mads Mikkelsen plane crashes in the Arctic, and so he has to survive out there. And that's a survivalist horror film. And we see all the stuff he has to do to survive. Like opening shot of the movie doesn't really spoil much what happens, but opening shot of the movie, he's digging in the snow. And you're not really sure what he's doing exactly, and it cuts out, and he's made a giant SOS in the snow, that you could see from a plane. But it's like he's been there a long time already. He's not carving it for the first time. He's maintaining it, right? Because
Yeah.
snow, wind and snow will kind of cover it up over time, so he has to maintain it a little bit every day. And it's like that's cool. That's the kind of stuff I want to see in a movie like this. This movie has no interest in like the ins and outs, the nitty-gritty of like what it means for these people to live and stuff. Obviously, part of the story is they don't get any food, right? Hunting does not go well for them. They never catch anything. So obviously, you can show them walking around with spears, but they don't even try to do like they don't even make you believe that they're doing anything interesting in terms of their hunting strategy. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah,
They're just wandering.
that was one of the things that really genuinely annoyed me is that like I don't know if the intent was to show this dude as a bad hunter, but he doesn't seem to know how to hunt, right? Like there's this problem with the main reason why human beings managed to survive the way that we did is pattern recognition and sort of like the ability to develop plans of attack, right? And to,
Yeah,
trick animals into becoming into tiring themselves out or into becoming food, right? Like basically like
yeah,
that, and perseverance kind of thing. This guy doesn't seem to understand how to do any of that. They don't try to trap game, right? There's no trapping
yeah. They
involved.
don't set up any traps. They don't like lie in wait in certain locations. They don't leave out anything like that they manage to gather in order to try to like bait something to come out. They don't do any of that. They just wander with their spears. Now, I understand that the movie's like, well, there's nothing around here for them to hunt. It's like, okay, but you could still show them
Try.
trying more competently,
Yeah,
right?
trying like a group of hunters might,
Yeah.
just wandering around,
That
with
would
your
make it so
spear
much better.
looking
Like
for
if
animals is
yeah,
not the way to do it, right? Like they manage to find some tracks, relatively early on. And then they follow them to we can talk about this now or maybe later, I don't know. They follow it to a corpse of a mammoth, right? Like this
yes.
big bared hollowed out corpse that like splattered at the bottom of a valley. And
Mhm.
this is one of the first of many little bait and switch moments, or like setting things up that do not pay off. This guy looks at the corpse that is like, oh, I don't know what happened. Did they push it? Did they chase it off the cliff? Did something chase it off a cliff? Did like what happened here? And he tells the teenager who's exploring with him, yeah, don't go tell the rest of the group about this because I don't know what did it. It's like,
Yeah. That's it's
okay,
so stupid. Big
okay,
mistake number 1. All right. Like I've never quite liked the trope of like, oh, we can't tell anyone because they'll panic or whatever. And it's like, I feel like you could just tell them useful information because what have you learned here? You've learned that there are mammoths
yeah.
in this land.
And the
And so
kid
it's like,
says this to him. He says, "But this means that there's prey, right?" Like,
yes. And he's like, basically the implication is it also means that there's predators. And they don't want to tell the others that something drove this mammoth off the cliff to come crashing down on these rocks and die. And then like took all the food and like.
yeah,
So something ate it, something killed it. And so it's like, don't tell anyone in the group about this. And it's like, okay, well, isn't your first like next step to try to like follow the tracks of the mammoth, kind of like reverse engineer where it came from, maybe? Because there are mammoths around here. That means there's more than one, right?
yeah.
Like,
There has to be more than one. Like, it can't have been the only one, dude. Like, there has to be more.
yeah. Okay, so they're not especially good hunters. Um,
Which begs the
watch,
question how he convinced anybody to come with him on this trip,
yeah,
right? Like,
yes, it does.
it's a problem.
Yeah. And so they're sitting around the campfire, and then they hear a noise in the darkness, and they're like, "Oh my god, what was that?" and the fire is not doing a very good job of lighting their surroundings, of course, for the sake of the movie. It's really dark out there and you can't see anything. It's like, oh my, you hear this like shrieking, inhuman shrieking noise. This will be important later. Remember, it's it's this crazy demonic
It sounds
screech,
like the
and you're
ring
like,
wraiths. It
it
sounds like
does,
the
yes,
Nazgul from Lord of the Rings, and keep this in mind because this is a very important part of this movie. Right, there's something in the darkness that is stalking them.
and
Yeah,
screeching
and
like a ring
screeching
wraith.
like a fucking ring wraith, like when they try to stab the hobbits, and then they find out that they fucked up, and they're all like yelling at each other. Right, like
Yeah,
it is terrifying, and they're
yes,
like legitimately, understandably scared. And there's
yeah,
another thing. When this begins, as they're sitting around the fire, right, is when the stray girl, who's an older teenager, has her first period. Right, she starts to menstruate
yeah.
in this, and she pulls a makeshift pad out of her pants and throws it, and there's blood on it, and all of a sudden there's a giant shrieking. Right,
Hmm.
baiting the idea that this thing, whatever it is attracted to the smell of blood, right?
Yeah, that's how it found them. That's what made it come check them out.
Yeah.
That's why it discovered them. That sort of thing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that is the idea that we're baiting here, that we're dangling in front of the audience,
Yes.
and this all
Really
starts to
quick
happen.
before you keep going, Daily Dose has made a good point in chat. They don't even harvest the bones from the mammoth for tools.
Well, because then they would know that there were mammoth.
Yeah,
Then
but
he'd
the
have to
line makes
explain.
no fucking sense.
He'd have
You could
to
just be like, I
explain.
found these bones. Like I don't know. It's so
It
stupid.
is dumb. No,
Anyway,
it's really dumb.
yeah,
Because like you would think that if you're worried that there might be a giant predator out there that gutted a mammoth and ate everything off of its bones, right, that like
yeah,
maybe you should arm the rest of your band so that
yeah.
not just there's not just two spears for six people, and
Hmm.
it's not two of you trying to keep everybody safe around the fire while you're out in the fucking open. I don't know,
Yeah.
that makes sense to me. It's something I might do.
So yes, they arrive in this new land, right? And there's not a lot to eat or not a lot to hunt or gather, right? And so they're building fires and then they're exploring, they're hunting and then doing a bad job of it. They discover the mammoth, like we said, but they're like, oh, don't tell the rest of the group because that means there's prey out here. Um, Main girl, whose name I don't remember, I'm just gonna keep calling her main girl because we'll eventually find out she's the main character, of course, because it's 2024. Um,
Oh yes,
and
and
right?
a good helping of Stone Age feminism.
Yeah, there's some of that too. Anyway, she gets her period. The mother character, the wife, the pregnant wife
Eve.
of Leader Man, he's like, yeah, Eve is like, this is a good thing because that means you're of age to have children, and that's a good thing, and well, and the implication being that he's like that she's also going to have to bear the children of the leader, I guess. I guess they have a sort of like harem style deal going on.
Yeah, I
Anyway.
mean,
It's not unsurprising, but she's dismayed at that. She doesn't want to be with the leader
yeah,
man.
but I don't want to, bear children. I want to be a warrior princess. I was made,
Right,
that.
well, it's not explicit like that, but that's definitely part of the implication, right?
Yeah,
Because as we'll see, other than leader man, she's the only one with any courage or bravery whatsoever. So that's cool. The other the
yeah.
other young
The
warrior kid
teenage.
is pathetic. It's absolutely pathetic, and it's like, I don't believe you at all, movie. I think he would be desperate to prove himself, if anything, especially in this sort of society. Anyway, anyway,
Soy boys existed in 45,000 BC.
yeah, and so he's pathetic, but she's brave and she's cool. So anyway, she gets her period, and like you said, then a monster comes at night, and it's like shrieking and making all sort of noises, and then it kidnaps the son of Leader Man, who's maybe like 10 or 11 or 12 or whatever.
Yeah,
However,
11. Let's go with 11. That seems like
yeah,
a good thing.
he's
And it's
pulled
like
away
a
from.
crazy supernatural tug, right? Like
Yeah,
caught by a like a fucking predator, chain. Like
and
it just
pulled away
yanks him out of the
really
fire.
beats them out of the shot, and they're like, "Oh my gosh!" And then immediately, Leader Man goes running after him, but it's gone. They've disappeared. And it's like, wow, he managed to pull away a near adult human being really quickly and really fastly. Oh my god, that's terrifying. The monster got him.
Berry picker mentality. Fuck, that's funny.
So, oh my gosh, he gets yeeted away from the fire and runs away really quickly. Like, oh my gosh, that's terrifying. They're picking him off one by one. And so Adam's like, I gotta go get my son, and because he's a brave man, and so he takes he makes a
Yeah,
torch.
we should also point out that the way that this happens, right, is he Adam goes like the stray her it's Daily Dose put the name in Balia. Balaya, I don't know. Stray,
I'm
the
calling
stray
her
girl,
main girl, Stray. Yeah,
main girl Stray has gone out away from the fire to throw away her makeshift, rope tampon, and then the monster has sort of like begun to sneak up because of the scent of blood, and Adam has come out and basically begun to say like, well, now you exist to serve me, kind of thing.
yeah.
And as she
Oh right, I
resists a
forgot that
bit,
happens first.
as
Yeah,
she resists a bit, then the shrieking starts. So they come back to the fire and they're all standing around, not knowing what to do. And then his son gets taken away. So it's like a righteous sort of justice moment. The
a
part where
little
you're
bit of that.
supposed to, where the audience is supposed to be like, well, so that that's what you get for being a shitty person, right? Like this.
Um, you could definitely take away something like that. They're going for something like that, yes. But they've established, that he's not a good man, the leader guy, and like I don't know. It's a very sort of modern, sort of feminist like
Perspective.
lens being
Yeah.
applied. It's like it's weird. I don't quite understand why we're doing that here. Anyway, son gets yeeted away, and Adam, leader man, is like, oh, I gotta go save my son. So he makes a torch out of the fire, and he goes running after them. And then the pathetic little berry picker boy is like, no, it's dark. If you leave and something happens to you, then we'll die for sure. Don't go.
I can't do this without you.
And so, I mean, it's not the worst argument ever, but like
Well,
his whole
he's not
vibe in the
wrong. He's
movie.
not wrong that it's like, well, you can't like the whole point of the movie, right? Is that like once it gets dark, they can't see outside of the fire because
Yeah,
moonlight
because
doesn't
fucking
exist.
dark.
I suppose.
That's the other thing. It's like, yeah, you, moonlight is a thing, and I guess we'll assume for the sake of the story that it was like no moon basically for the entirety of
Yes,
their journey.
and to be fair, to especially Jay has pointed out in the chat that it is his son. It's like, yeah, no, I will allow for some irrational behavior in the defense of his son. Right? He goes busting out into the darkness to try
Well,
to
here's the
save him.
thing. If it's a demon that can like run super fast and yeet him away and like completely disappear in such a short amount of time, yeah, maybe don't go try to chase after it now. Wait till the light or something like
Yeah,
that.
that yeah.
But let's say it was something, I don't know, a lot slower and a lot less powerful. Maybe it would have actually been smart to go run after him immediately. Just hypothetically.
Yeah, yeah, well, maybe. Yeah, who knows? Who
Just
knows?
hypothetically speaking.
But that's not what it's going to be, obviously. This is a demon, right? It's but um yeah, so I mean you're right. It's not necessarily irrational, but if you think it's a demon or if it seems like a supernatural thing, it is a good argument from the berry picker kid that maybe we should wait till light to pick up the trail, right? Like
Yeah.
hunters, we are hunters. We know how to do this ostensibly. So perhaps we should wait until we can
Or
see the
don't
trail.
leave us here, because the other argument would be like if he goes running out into the darkness, maybe the thing just circles around and then kills another one of them, or all of
Yeah.
them.
Yeah. So yeah, I mean I understand both sides of this one. I'm not,
It just comes back to the fact that this is all a very stupid plan, and that they really only have one strong, able-bodied person.
yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
and
It
it's
it
like,
it,
uh-oh,
it doesn't
this
really
wasn't
make
very
sense that they've marooned themselves out here. You did address that, Jay. I appreciate that. It doesn't make a lot of sense that they, marooned themselves out in this barren wasteland that they have no idea where it is.
only 6 people, one of whom is pregnant, uh, like 3 of which are below the age of 15, and one of them is so old he can do nothing, essentially.
Yeah.
This was all very, very stupid. Anywho, um, so at the first light. Actually, no. Sorry, I should mention before this happens, before the night where his son gets yeeted away. When they're exploring, they find a forest. When
Right.
they're hunting, I should say, they find a forest, and they're like, "Oh, if we cut through the forest, we'll get to the mountain that we were hoping to find a cave to live in. We'll get there faster this way. And he's like, no, I'm not sending them through a forest. We're going to stay out in the open. I guess where you can see what's coming more easily and that sort of thing. I don't love that argument. If they decided to do that, it's like not impossible or not completely illogical, but at least I want the other argument made. It's like, well, where do you think you're going to gather all the things that you might want to eat, like berries and fruits and stuff
And
and
tree
nuts and
nuts and things, you know, like you
where
can.
mushrooms? So like, where are you going to find all that stuff? Oh, probably in the woods, because everything else is just a barren landscape with nothing on it. Maybe you'll find squirrels to trap in here. Like the forest is where all the stuff you want is, and they're like, no, we're not going in there. It's too spooky. It's like I understand maybe not making your camp in the forest. Maybe so like
Well,
you can see what's coming. Maybe.
it also provides some measure of shelter from elements, you know, like it breaks a little bit of the wind. It would, you know, there's a canopy
Yeah, they'll
above
be
that might,
warmer. Yeah.
yeah.
Actually, I'm not convinced by this argument at all. Actually, I think at least the other side of the argument should be made, if nothing else, but probably they should go into the woods.
Yeah, it
Definitely.
seems like a smarter idea instead of taking, which is another issue that I have with his character, right? Being established as the one who takes risks and, you know, goes across the English Channel without any knowledge of what might be over there, and he won't go through the woods to get somewhere
Yeah.
quicker.
Oh,
I don't
that's the
know.
other thing.
That's
Yeah,
a
like
little.
we're contradicting character already. And also, if you're okay, you have a fire going at night, right? You can't really see, at least according to this movie's logic, you can't really see more than like 3 or 5 feet out from the center of the fire. Except that you can in wide shots, which I found annoying. You know, when we have the spooky scenes of them around the fire, like the light drops off so quickly that you can't see anything in the darkness more than like 5 feet in front of you. But when we cut to wide shots, you can see the landscape around them dimly lit with like the blue moonlight and everything. It's
Yeah.
like, can we just pick one and stick with it? You know, dim is also scary. You know, I mean, it doesn't need to be completely pitch black. Like the firelight should spread a little further than that. It's a minor nitpick, but yeah, you should probably go to the woods. A, because that's where everything you'd want to hunt and gather lives, except for maybe these mammoths, but you don't seem interested in trying to find more of them. B, there's a lot of materials to build fire from here,
Or tools or
or
traps,
tools,
you know.
or traps. You know,
There's a good likelihood you'll find more, you know, more food to forage. If there's trees, there's probably a water source somewhere in there that you could
probably.
use, you
Yeah,
know.
there's that. There's also the fact that if you build a fire here, you know, using brush or whatever, you make sure it's not going to spread out and light the whole forest on fire. But also, it'll cast light onto trees and stuff. You'll actually be able to see farther. Like you know, like the whole idea of like being out in the open so you can see things coming from like far away doesn't work at night anyway. You know, because you can't see them coming from far away. But like if you have trees staggering out into the distance, light can hit them. You know what I mean? Like, I, anyway,
Yeah.
none of the avoiding the forest plan really makes sense to me. You could stay near the edge of it if you don't want to get lost in the middle. That's fine.
Yeah.
I get that. If
And
you like, the smart thing to do would not be to just like take the long way around and never go into the forest. The smart thing to do would be to like walk along the edge of the forest, right? Because then you can go into the forest for things, but you don't go so far in that you get lost and turned around. You know what I mean?
yeah, well, there's also a pretty simple way, you know, of marking where you went in the forest, and that's basically just like cutting notches or carving designs into the trees.
Yeah, you would expect them to do shit like that, but they don't.
You know, it's
They
like
don't.
that's something that you would think that if you were a Stone Age person, you probably like people probably figured that out. That's probably how they didn't get lost in a
Yes.
lot of cases.
Yes.
In
Jay Jameson also points out alternative solution, build multiple fires. Yes, that's
yes,
another thing I thought several times is like, you know, they don't seem to have any problem getting wood or getting materials to build fires. They could just build multiple fires.
yeah, and I just want to address also something from Topaz earlier. That Leaderman does not believe in demons, but he does believe in a giant predator that destroyed, like absolutely destroyed a woolly mammoth, and he doesn't know what it is. And then he heard some creepy shrieking in the in the darkness when Stray threw her period blood out there. So he
Yeah.
does believe that something very
out
dangerous
there.
is out
Yeah,
there and took his kid and disappeared into the woods. So like
but it's
that would,
not a
but it
supernatural
may not be
monster, I guess.
supernatural. He doesn't think it's supernatural, but like later on, that's what it will become. We're kind of just mixing the terms here at the moment. But yeah, you're right. He does not believe in the demons, which he probably would, if honestly.
Yeah.
But we'll give him a pass. He
They
doesn't
don't do
believe in
it
that.
like what might you expect someone like from this time period to do if they think there's a demon monster out there,
Like a
right? I don't
giant
know, like
saber-toothed cat or something like that, right? Like
yeah, or like, I don't know, they just don't do a lot of the things they should do. Anyway, so after the son gets yeeted away, they go tracking him to try to find out where he went. And oh my gosh, the trail leads them to the woods. I guess they're gonna have to go into the woods. So they go into the woods,
is this
running.
and this is the part where they're running into the woods and they throw their furs
Oh, that
off,
was really
like they
yes.
strip their jackets off for some reason and
You
just
just drop
leave
them as
them.
they keep running. It's like you're gonna have to go back and pick that up. This is so stupid. Like yes, they're
Oh,
sprinting through the woods looking
but
for the. Go
but
ahead.
we forgot to mention the main reason why they pick up the trail and run into the woods is that while they're tracking, as soon as first light hits, as dawn creeps over the hills, he's up and running. Like he's like, all right, time to go, let's go. He hasn't
Hmm.
slept. He's like, all right, cool. Yeah, and I liked that about this. I'm like, okay, yeah, he's
Yeah.
there to help his son. But as they're running, they find his son's furs, like the cloak that he's wearing, and it's
Yeah.
covered with some foul smelling,
Oh,
sticky
you're right.
black goo,
Yes.
a la Prometheus.
I'm so glad you mentioned that.
And they ask him, like, what is it? And he goes, I don't know, but it's not blood. My son is alive. And then he takes off
Running.
sprinting into the
Yes.
woods,
Dropping his
dropping
furs in
his
the
furs,
process.
the thing that's keeping him warm, right, in the process, and just hauling ass into the woods with everybody else, right? Like they have a little bit of time to discuss, like, should we do it? And he just bolts in, right? And so they all follow him.
Yeah. Yes, it is like venom goo. That's it's the kind of thing that, I don't know, some sort of demonic monster could make, definitely. I'm not sure who else could.
Mm.
Um,
What
hmm.
is yeah, I mean, it certainly seems like we're going with some kind of weird supernatural thing. All right, I'm in. All right, there's a
I am
supernatural
in.
creature in the
Yeah.
woods. This guy's not really the brightest bulb in the box, but let's see.
Yes.
I'm sure
I
we'll
don't
get
like the
something.
characters, they're not making smart decisions, we're not really seeing anything interesting in terms of, like, their survival process and day to day, we're not really getting anything like that, none of the character interactions really do anything for me, but I'm like, "Okay, it really does seem like there's a demon out there, I'm intrigued by that." Let's ju I It gets to the point where, like, they're wandering through the woods and they're lost and they're not making any progress, and we've done quite a bit of, like, seeing something, like, either slink in front of the camera like you see in the trailer, or like something move between trees in the distance. They like you get little glimpses of it. They're really trying to like hide the monster and build it up. So I'm like getting to the point where there's nothing really else I like about the movie, so I'm like, just show me the demon, just show me the demon. I'm so ready, just fucking show it to me already. But they don't, they're teasing it, and I'm like, okay, at least if it's a cool design or something like that, that'll give me something to be interested in.
Yeah,
Because they're trying to do like fear of the unknown, like your imagination is worse. But because there's nothing else going in the story, as far as I'm concerned, I'm like, just show it to me. I just want to see what your design looks like.
yeah. They're trying to kind of make up for this by using a lot of crazy, bizarre camera techniques. Like it'll flip over, and all of a sudden we're watching everything upside down.
Yeah,
Uh,
like kind of artsy, stylish stuff that doesn't really fit the movie at all. So here's a complaint I have. The movie in some ways is like, no, we can't have unmotivated light, so everything's got to be sort of underlit, only natural light, only lit by the fire, and so everything's very shallow focus because they're not using any artificial lights, so therefore they have to really like open up the camera lens to let light in, and so everything has a really shallow depth of field. I don't really like that, but I'm fine. They want to go for a realistic look, and they want to have them speak an ancient pseudo language, because they're going for realism. That's fine. Meanwhile, the camera's doing all sorts of weird artsy trickery that's very stylish and not grounded at all. And I'm like, you gotta pick a lane, man. Because we're doing shots where like the camera's whoa, it's flipping around, and then we're looking upside down. We're doing things where we see someone cross from the left to the right of the frame, and then like once they go behind a tree, like we've somehow done some sort of weird cut where they're somewhere else now. We're doing things like these kind of artsy transitions, or like stylish, I'll say, transitions that like really kind of undercut that we're going for grounded realism thing. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
And the music is very like the music's not going for a simple sort of pared down realistic score. It's all very kind of like, I don't know, it's going for A24 vibes. That's what I keep coming back to. There's a lot of stuff that it seems to contradict. Like, okay, well, if you're gonna do all that stuff, then maybe you could light the scenes a little better with some artificial light so I can see what's happening and the focus doesn't have to be so shallow. Things like that.
yeah, yeah, and so I've been looking at the trailer also while as it's playing in the background here, and I want to point out that one of the things that really drew me in, and it's a small thing in this trailer, but there's a scene that you'll see come up at one point here where they cut it together. They have somebody saying we trespassed. Then they have the band kind of running and stopping in front of the woods, and somebody else says to Adam, "We can't go in there," and he says, "My son is in those woods." That did not happen in the actual movie.
Oh, weird.
That was not a scene that like they kept, which is it's a small thing, but it really changes what we're looking at here, because the trailer is basically showing us this movie about a father who's like a Stone Age father who's taking risks, whose son gets kidnapped by something in the woods, and now he has to lead this band to try to get him back, right? That's
Yeah,
the story that we're telling in this trailer. That
it's
is
much better.
it
It's
is a better story than what we're going to get. That's not what we end up getting. That is not where it
weird.
ends up going.
Yeah.
That we're not even halfway through at this point. This is like right up into like the first 25 minutes. We're at the inciting part, inciting
Yeah.
incident. So we're not out of that mode of storytelling yet, but we're about to be, now that we're in the woods and running through,
Yeah.
dropping our furs and setting up monsters and shit.
They're running through the woods, and they're looking for this monster, and eventually they get to the point where they're like they lost the trail. No, 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 they didn't quite lose the trail. They found
I found the hunting ground full of bones and meat and
yeah,
stuff.
bones and meat and blood and stuff like that
And it's
just in
like
the
the
middle
the
of the woods.
ground, like in the middle of this part of the woods, when it's goopy, right? Like they're stepping on it and they're tripping and they're
Yeah,
covered in like in rotting meat
goop
and
and
goo and blood and stuff. And there's
yeah.
bones everywhere. And
It's like this looks like the abode of some sort of demon thing.
yeah, it's like this is the hunting ground of a monster, or like something
Yeah.
is like bringing them in there, right? And at this point somebody says to him, "Your son is dead, we shouldn't have come here," and he turns and he goes, "Run." And so they turn around and start running the other way. um
Mhm.
okay, like I'm not against it. It's not a bad decision, right? Like he came in here, I
Guns
guess,
a-blazing.
guns a blazing, to save his son. um But you would think that, like, given everything that's happened that set them off on this path, that maybe he would be a little more concerned about this possibility, right? Like that maybe this is like running headlong into the abode. Like you would hope that maybe that somebody who's a skilled hunter might realize that you don't just run full fledged straight at a predator, even if
Yeah.
he does have your son. Um, and then, like, when you
Anyway,
end up accidentally right in the killing ground of the predator, you realize, oh fuck, I probably, yeah, you know what?
should've done
Shouldn't have
that.
done that. Maybe we turn around. Now maybe it's time to plan. You
Then
know,
they hear more shrieking in the woods, right? I'm pretty sure they hear more
oh yeah, they hear more
shrieking.
shrieking in the woods, and he says run, and they start, trying to hightail it out of there.
But then, oh, but the sun's going down, so I guess we're gonna have to stop here and build a fire. And so there's this funny scene where they're hearing shrieking in the woods, and then okay, first of all, they do this shot where the camera's shaking, like they actually put like a meme shake effect on the camera.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
it's like it was so stupid. I couldn't believe how stupid it was. I'm like, that does not belong in this movie. What are you doing? The camera was shaking. I don't know, it's something almost like out of Evil Dead almost, or like a David Lynch movie. like a
Yeah,
dream
it
sequence,
looked
right?
yeah, it reminded me of of Twin Peaks a little bit of like, and not even of like the good Twin Peaks, of Twin Peaks, season 3, where they would be like staring at the black hole in the sky and everything would start just kind of vibrating, you know.
Yeah, no, they're like, oh my God, there's something spooky out there, and like their POV looking into the woods is shaking violently. I should also add that while they're running through the woods, the camera is so shaky, it's so hard to watch. Very like not pleasant to look at all. So
Yeah.
many scenes of them running are just like, I don't like watching this. This is not pleasant. The movie is obsessed with like really tight close-ups and shaky camera work, and I hate it. And it's like, you don't, so few shots you actually really get to see the whole environment. It's
Yeah.
so tight.
Well, and I should point out that I don't like, personally, I don't know like, I don't necessarily mind that goofy, like, low budget horror effect of like the trees shaking and
Oh, I
everything.
absolutely do.
No, that yeah, look, I understand. Trust me, I get it. I'm not entirely opposed to the idea if it's actually going to go somewhere. um,
Well, yeah, I should mention that that type of like, okay, so when they're running through the woods, the camera seems to be running too, and the
oh
focus
no,
is
no,
really
no,
shallow. So
that's
hold on.
annoying. Yeah.
Uh, I know, and that's really annoying, but like the kind of shaky I'm talking about for this one specific shot, this is for the viewers at home who haven't seen the movie, is the camera is just stationary and it's shaking violently like
Like you've
like it's
slapped
having a
the
seizure.
like you've
Yeah.
slapped the Russell Jimmy's meme on top of it.
Exactly. It's very unmotivated. It's like not anyone's point of view. It's just a thing that's happening now, and there's no other shot like it, which is part of what feels so unmotivated about it.
Well, and
Anyway,
it's interesting because at first I was like, "Oh, is that a POV?" Because it does it, and then it cuts immediately to Adam, kind of like looking around, and I'm like, "Oh, is that what this shriek of this crazy sci-fi monster is doing to the mind of the Stone Age people?" Like, ooh,
I don't know.
okay, okay.
It's so out of place.
It
Anyway,
is no, it's very
there's
out of place. I was just like,
yeah.
like, I'm sitting there thinking, like, okay, maybe there's like some kind of interesting low budget thing that was low budget visual storytelling we're trying for here. Maybe,
Yeah.
I can
So
I can
they're
accept that.
surrounded by this monster, right? And it's shrieking, and they don't know which way it's coming from. It's like, oh, the sun's going down. We don't have time to get out of the woods. We got to build a fire here now. And so while they're standing, like terrified, looking in, like, oh my God, it could be out there. What is it? Like, there's, it's a really funny scene, honestly. Main girl is tasked with like striking rocks together, or whatever, to try and start a fire. And she's just like, eh, 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 like trying to do it over
It's
and
just
over
not
while everyone else is
working.
just standing there doing nothing. Even the people who are useless to like fight, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
They're
like
just
the old
standing there.
man just stands there and kind of like looks around. They don't give
They're all
him,
just
yeah.
standing there, and the sun is going down, and nothing happens except that they all stand there looking out into the woods.
And then it
Like,
gets pitch dark. It fades to black as the
yeah,
sun sets, and then oh boy, here's the fire. It's the only light that we have, right? And now
yes,
he says to build a fire, and the old man who exists, like, you'd think that they brought him along for a reason, some kind of wisdom reason, but really he's just there to be the guy in the horror movie who tells the main character that his idea is stupid whenever he gets a
yeah,
chance.
yeah,
Like,
yeah,
there's not really a point to. He just goes, "What? We're gonna build a fire here," and he goes, "Well, at least we'll die in the light." Is what Adam says, basically implying that they're going to stand their ground and like wait for it to come to them. And I want you to keep this in mind because immediately after the fire comes up, and we hear the shrieking and the rustling in the trees beyond the fire, Adam
Mhm.
takes one of their spears and wings it into the darkness where he has no idea what he's aiming at, right? He
Yeah,
just flings it away into the darkness and then takes the other one and just hoofs off running. He's
yeah,
just gone. He has left the safety that he demanded of the fire to run
hmm
off into the darkness after
after
something he cannot
whatever,
see.
yeah, yeah. So and then he dies.
Yeah.
Go figure. He gets killed. Uh-oh. Adam Man, who is stupid now because the movie needs him to be stupid, he runs out into the darkness trying to kill whatever. He can't see shit. He gets killed and you hear him shrieking like, "Ah, it got me." It doesn't say it got me, but that's basically what happens. And so everyone else is like, and then kid who was like, "We can't go after your son because we have to wait for it to be safe." Now he's decided, I'm going to go after Adam into the darkness also.
Yes, with yeah.
It's it's so stupid. Their decisions are awful. It's awful. And
Okay,
like
real
horribly.
quick. Daily,
Yes.
Daily saying that it sounded like the spear hit the creature. I did not get that at all. Did you get that from watching this? Did you feel
I
like it sounded like it hit
maybe
anything?
I thought so. Maybe I don't
I didn't
remember.
hear. I did not get that at all, and it doesn't seem like it did. Because it did, there's not. It's not like we see him tracking like drips of blood on the ground looking for the creature,
Oh,
right?
and
He just is
we won't.
running around in the woods in the dark, hoping that.
And we're not gonna give it away yet because there's a twist coming that I really want to be a surprise for everyone who hasn't seen this movie. But I don't think there's any indication later on that he hit whatever is out there.
Yeah, I would say that as well. Yeah, there's not really. That
It
doesn't
might have
seem to follow.
if maybe I'm just misremembering. It might have made a sound when the spear went out there, like it was surprised or something. I
I
didn't get
yeah.
the vibe that he had hit it.
Neither did I, but it might have. It might
That would
have.
have been incredibly lucky because he was aiming at nothing. But anyway, so he goes out after whatever the demon thing is, instead of staying in the light, which is what the smart thing would be to do. So he's not the same person anymore. Oh, and then he gets killed. And so a kid who was like, "Well, we can't go chase after your son because we might get killed." He's like, "Okay, I guess now I'm gonna go abandon everyone else here to go run into the woods." He goes running into the woods and finds him with his like face smashed in, like his
It's
jaw
his
like
like his
absolutely
lower jaw
busted.
and his throat have been like slit from the slit upward up the middle basically.
Yeah, he's got his shit kicked in, essentially. He's not dead. He's well, I mean, he's basically dead. I'm saying he hasn't been eaten. He hasn't been taken away. He's just there, like incapacitated, essentially. He's got his like skull fucked up. And so Berry Picker Boy picks him up and brings him back to camp. And they're like, "Oh no, now what are we gonna do? Oh, we don't have anything to eat."
We got to put him out of his misery. Well, first they have to put him out of his misery.
Yeah,
And Berry Picker Boy is like
doesn't
weeping,
want to do it. He
can't do it.
hesitates to do it. Yeah,
So
which I mean,
the stray does it instead.
the stray girl boss character does it instead, and she does it with ease, honestly, because she's the only one with any like courage and bravery and fortitude for some reason. She does it with ease, but also with this sort of like, well, that's what he gets for like
For
thinking that I'm his now
if we're trying to
energy.
possess me.
Yeah, it's like, oh god, what are we doing? Anyway, so she kills him with ease, and honestly, she's like a little. It comes off as a little bit of a psychopath, honestly, with like the
Well,
way
yeah,
she does it.
because
Yeah,
immediately after she does it, she goes, "Well, at least now we have something to eat." Like,
yeah.
like
And
her
so
first thought is, "Okay, we killed him. Now we can eat." Like, let's fuck it,
yeah,
let's do it. Like, chow down, buddy.
like I know they haven't eaten anything for a while. I know they're very hungry. But also, you're in the woods, like, you can't find anything to eat here in the woods,
Well, they
like,
don't
they
want
haven't
to
even
because there's a
tried.
monster out there, man. That just
Well, yeah, but, like, during the day even? Anyway, whatever. So, they're like, "Oh, we gotta eat right now." So, they kill or he's already dead. They eat Adam and, they cannibalize him in order to survive.
The only one who doesn't is Berry Picker Boy. He is the only one who
He
has some
refuses.
semblance of morality in this situation, where he's like, "Nope, not gonna do it. Not gonna do
Yeah,
it."
and the problem is, it's like, okay, I can understand what they're going for. Like, they're so down on their luck, and then he gets killed, and they eat him because they have nothing else. Like
Yeah,
obviously
I can
there
get
there are
that.
cases, there are survival scenarios where you might have to resort to cannibalism, and most people would agree that it's not unethical to do so in order to survive. However, they've been so stupid in this movie and so inept in terms of gathering food or even looking like so I'm not especially sympathetic. It also doesn't help that none of the characters look like they're starving. This is a big criticism my girlfriend had when we watched it. It's like I was like, well, yeah. My first thought was, yeah, like, well, you can't actually starve the actors, and she's like, there's makeup, and I'm like, you know what, you're right.
You're right.
Like,
There is makeup, and you know what else would be interesting is if they had that show up at all in the way that they're taking the actions, because they've been running around a lot,
and
and
they
for
don't
not
look
having
tired, really.
for not having eaten in a few days. A couple people have pointed out in the chat, like, for not having eaten in a few days, they're running pretty
That's
well.
fine. Yeah.
Like, yeah, they don't
They're not
seem
showing the signs of starvation. So because they don't look like they're starving, because they're I mean
they don't
like
act like they're starving.
main girl who proposes the idea of eating him is like if anything, she's got sort of like a chubbier face. You know what I mean? Like she's doing fine.
She's got some baby fat left on her. Yeah, no,
Yeah.
like you could, and yeah, you don't have to, have her do the whole buccal fat removal, surgery for the role, but you can put some gaunt looking makeup. You're already shooting it in
Yeah.
crazy
You can
low light.
contour.
Like
Yeah.
you can
Yeah.
contour and make it look better than that.
Yes, you could do that. Also, you could have them showing the physical behavioral signs of starvation where they're super weak and like they can't stand up without being lightheaded, things like that. They don't do any of that. They're running full tilt and then like they're doing all sorts of stuff that like you would not be able to do at all if you were that starving. So because they haven't done any of the work of setting all that stuff up, when they resort to cannibalism, it's like, "Oh my God, you guys are just psychopaths."
Yeah. Well, and the
You are not.
pregnant one starts having seizures, which is interesting because they're
You
like, yeah, they're like, oh my god, yeah, no, I'll like, because she was just hauling ass too,
Yeah.
pregnant, hauling ass through the woods, and then hauling ass back through the woods, and now when Adam is dead, she starts having these seizures because she's starving to death. And so now, we get to the point where it's like, oh, well, yeah, I guess this is how we're forcing the plot to resort to the cannibalism of the leader, right? Like, that's basically what we're doing.
Yeah. So yeah, that's their motivation. Oh, the pregnant lady is gonna die, so like we gotta eat. She just like collapses and starts having a seizure. I thought what I would assume people like this would do is if she just like collapses and starts having a seizure in this moment would not be, oh, she just really needs food. I'm one of these people. It'd be like, oh my God, she's possessed by a demon. Like that seems more likely because she didn't pass out. She started like seizing, which is I don't know. I
I
don't
don't,
think
yeah,
that's
I'm not an expert on starvation in pregnant women or anything like that, like how that shows up. I mean,
yeah.
I don't know. I don't know if that's how that would go down. Um, but yeah,
Regardless, yeah, they
I would
resort
have
to
expected more
cannibalism pretty
magical thinking
quickly.
from these people,
Yeah. Yeah,
which,
you would expect more magical thinking, absolutely. So
yeah,
they resort to cannibalism and they eat this guy. And the only one who has any qualms about it is Berry Picker Boy. He's like, no, he takes the meat, his portion of the meat or whatever, and
he,
he like buries
he
it in the
buries it,
ground.
which is interesting because my girlfriend, when we watched it, pointed out that it's just like, why wouldn't, so if that girl, if the stray is, so about the survival thing, and she's like chowing down like it's nothing, right? Like she's just like scarfing this guy down, like the others are kind of gagging and like having some kind of, like we see the pregnant woman starting to eat and she makes a sound like she's gonna like vomit from eating this. Um, and the other guy is kind of hesitant, but he's doing it. And then this guy buries, but she like the stray is just devouring. She's like, all right, feast,
Yeah,
good time.
Glee,
You would
which
think that
is
she might, and
also
she sees him bury the meat, and you would think that she might have something to say about that, maybe. Just
yeah, but
like,
she
hey,
doesn't.
you wasted food, like.
Yeah.
But no, that not. That's just a nitpick. That's not like a big deal. But
Yeah, it's a little thing though. I thought the
yeah,
same thing. I'm like, okay, well, if you won't do it, maybe give it to the people who will, or something. But the worst thing about that scene for me is when she's when Stray main girl is eating the meat of Adam. Like the movie has so many like mouth sounds in the sound design that are super loud, and I'm like, I don't want to hear this stupid ASMR cannibalism stuff. Stop it. Like the mouth sounds are so like gross and loud and like right in your ears. I'm like, I hate this. Stop doing this, please. It's not like it showed it in such a close up that it warranted that either. It was just unnerving, and I didn't like it. Um, so they've resorted to cannibalism. That's not great. What
things aren't
immediately
looking well for the party.
so now like they're down to four, remember. They have a pregnant woman, they have old man who's been useless, they have like 14-year-old boy and maybe
Berry
50
picker.
like berry picker boy and like I don't know, let's call her like
Let's call
well,
it
she's
15.
probably
Yeah.
yeah, let's just call her 50. She's probably a little younger. But anyway, That's it. That's all they have. So now their leader is this kid who isn't super courageous, isn't super competent. Well, none of them are super competent, but it's like, they're not in a good place. So they wake up the next day and they're like, we got to get out of these woods. And
And this is the part where I noticed that they don't even seem to have just like that basic instinct of marking where you go. Like
no,
you would expect somebody who spent 14 to 15 years living in a
living in the
society
wilderness. Yeah,
like this to know how to do at least. Like,
yeah,
he's not just starting, you know.
no.
He would have been
These
doing
aren't
this as a
modern
kid.
people. These aren't modern city people dropped in the woods who maybe wouldn't think to do that because they never had to do that in their life. This is
Yeah.
someone who's grown up in a Stone Age society, hunting and gathering in the wilderness. And so they go walking through the woods, not marking where they've been at all, nothing of that sort. And what do you know? They get lost and end up right back where they started. It's like, you guys suck. You guys suck really hard.
Yeah,
I
and
would do better than this, and I
yes.
don't I don't live in the wilderness.
I'm not a Stone Age Neanderthal, but I know I would be I know I could do this better than you.
Yeah.
Like, it's yeah.
So, so there's a division in the group arguing about what they should do.
Well, now that they've fucked up and gone in
Yeah,
circles, they're like, well,
I
okay,
know.
no point in trying again. Let's see,
Yes.
like that plan is never going to work. We can't just, go we can't just walk out and, try again, but this time remember to mark the trees, right? This
Yeah.
time we have to offer the monster, which is definitely a demon, because the old man who I like, this is where I sort of got the shaman idea from, is because he's like, well, I'm wisdom. I'm the wisdom of the tribe, and I know we have to offer the demon a sacrifice, right? Now, it's I think it's worth pointing out that earlier in the movie, when they're running into the woods and they think that the monster has the sun, right? The older man says to Adam before he's dead that he's figured out that the reason that this thing is hunting them is because the teenage girl is bleeding, right? So
Yes.
he's like, well, or he thinks he's figured this out, right? Like, it's after the scent of blood.
Yeah, he
And
says that the monster can smell it. I can smell it. That's he's especially creepy about it as well.
yeah, which is interesting because if you think like you and my first thought was, okay, well, if he's figured this out, right, that like he thinks it's after the blood, um would the best idea here in order to maybe try to lure the monster into a trap be to smear some blood somewhere? Yeah, smear some fresh blood on a tree, or like cut your hand and drip it on something and try to lure it to you so that you have the advantage instead of just running into the monster's den. Kind of like how a hunter might do it if they figure out how to.
Yeah, that would be smarter. Yeah, and this is part of why I never even once considered him to be a wise shaman archetype, is because he's stupid and creepy and weird.
Yeah.
He's almost like an old, he's superstitious in a bad way. Like immediately when they're like, "This is a demon," the movie presents it like as like a bad, ugly, monstrous thing to do. He's like, "Well, if there's a demon, we need to appease it." Now, first thought apparently is to sacrifice one of their only four remaining people. What? She's one of your only like able-bodied people at all,
She's the only one who was able to like actually put the dude out of his misery. She's the one who got you the food. Like,
Exactly.
if you're gonna pick
And you're
anybody,
just
you're gonna pick the teenager, right? Like, I don't know. That
like
doesn't
you
make
wouldn't pick
you wouldn't pick
anybody.
anybody. Yeah. That. Oh,
There's
and
four people stuck in the wilderness in a foreign land. You can't just kill one of your only remaining people. So like this is the other thing that bothered me. It's like they didn't even bother trying to make any other sort of ceremonial sacrifice type thing.
they didn't
You know
try
what I
any
mean?
magical protection. They didn't draw
They didn't burn
runes in the
anything.
dirt. They didn't burn anything. They didn't do a bone ritual, but asking.
They didn't like sacrifice some of their own blood. They didn't do anything of that. They're just like, well, we're lost in these woods. We can't try again. We can't mark where we're going. We can't do any of the other things that might be useful. We
Oh,
can't
and
even go looking for food. Instead, what we're going to do is kill
one of
one
these.
quarter of the people in our party. We're just going to sacrifice them to the demon, and that should be enough.
Yeah, we still don't have any food. We still don't know where there's water. There's no shelter anywhere. But fuck it, let's give it a shot because we tried to get out once and it didn't, and we ended up in circles because none of us were smart enough to mark where we were going. And real quick to address Quantum Ranger in the chat here, is it meant to be implied like they are magically stuck in the forest? No. And once we get to the end, we'll tell you how we know that. Um, but
It
it
wouldn't be
wouldn't be
unreasonable to
unreasonable
think
to
that
assume that. I like where
point.
your head's at. I like what you're thinking.
Because clearly, I would say, clearly, something supernatural is happening here, or at least something supernatural or otherworldly, something that doesn't exist in our normal reality is out there.
Right? Yeah, that
That
makes
has
sense.
very much. Okay, let's think about, because we're coming up to what actually is out there. We're almost there.
Yeah, we're getting
Now,
close.
well, actually, I'm going to sum up all the things we know right before it happens. So, when they're like, okay, well, I guess we can't try walking through the woods anymore. I guess we're going to sacrifice one of our own people as an offering to the demon. So, a pregnant woman and old man try to gang up on a main stray girl. And they're like, we're up, sorry, we're going to have to kill you and sacrifice you to the demon. Um, Berry Picker Boy tries to fight back, but he gets pushed and hits his head on a rock. And so he's out, he's down for the count. He's
Yep.
out of this fight. And so they take her, they drag her to Bone Town, or what
The
someone called it.
elephant graveyard, basically.
The Bone Zone, that's what they
The
called it,
bone
yes.
zone.
They drag her to the Bone Zone, to the elephant graveyard, and they're like, "Demon, here's our sacrifice to you." And they try to kill her, or try to like cut her, and like a fight ensues, and like the one girl gets hit. You remember exactly how that part plays out?
No, not so. Is it no, the older dude's leg snaps somehow.
Oh, in the scuffle, yeah, he just like randomly kind of steps wrong, and
The
like his shin bone comes
osteoporosis is
out.
really
Yeah,
hitting him hard. That lack of calcium supplements in the Stone Age kind of comes back to bite him. And
yeah,
he falls down, and so he can't move. And then I can't remember what she does to the pregnant lady, but she pushes her or something and knocks her out.
yeah.
Um, and she gets up and runs. She gets up and runs away, but she turns around to like watch what's happening because she hears something approaching the bone zone, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And the pregnant lady, well, then we get this like really artsy, stylistic scene of the Northern Lights where like things are blinking in, and it's yellow, like yellow greenish color, and it blinks in and out of darkness. And
Oh, right,
there's
it's night again
yeah,
already. That's how short the day was. All they did was wander through the woods and come back to where they were, and the whole day's gone now.
yeah.
So, yeah, so it's nighttime, and the northern lights are out there, and so the northern lights are casting a green, ominous glow onto this stuff, and it's like, this is so dull. Will you just get on with it, please? It's
Yeah,
trying really hard to
it's
be
trying
like
really hard to be
vibey.
kind of cool and artsy, and this is where we start to first see the image of the creature, right? A little bit like as she runs past, there's like this what would you call it? It's like a almost like a black bone looking thing that like turns as she runs.
So it's this big figure standing upright. It's mostly black. We're seeing it like through the fog and through the dim light, and it looks like it's got some sort of like, I don't know, e-
It
like
kind
a
of looks like
bone.
you might even compare it a little bit to the bear from Annihilation. It's got that kind of look to it.
Yeah, like a Wendigo almost.
Yeah. Well, and yeah, that's kind of what I thought we were doing here a little bit. But
Yeah. Some
um
sort of, it's like some monstrous creature that has some exposed bone as part of it. I don't know if it's like it's hard to tell, but it looks kind of skeletal, you know. And so we're about to see what this is now. Before we get the big reveal of what this monstrous thing is,
oh, and
what?
it sucks the pregnant in the real quick, in the Northern Lights scene, it sucks the pregnant woman's body away. Like she just gets
Yeah,
like vacuumed out of where it is. And we watch as the older dude who broke his leg and can't move watches this happen, right? Like, we
I
see
think
from
so.
what happens from his perspective. And it just like she's there 1 second and then she just gets sucked into the darkness. Um
Yes.
Yeah.
And then when I think it's like the early morning, and then the fog is there, and we see the creature again, and this is like we're almost getting to the reveal. This is the most we've ever seen of it.
Hmm.
And now, right before we reveal
Well,
what the
and
creature is, because this is the big moment,
yeah,
this is the big twist. I
let's
want to talk.
recap what happened here.
Yeah, let's recap what we definitely know this thing has done and is capable of. Right.
Yeah.
So first of all, it makes a really bizarre inhuman screech, which is cool. It doesn't really sound like it could be like if you're not familiar, like it's almost like a fox. Like foxes make some bizarre fucking
Yeah.
noises. It's not a fox call, but it could sound a little like that. It's a inhuman screech. Obviously, a human could make it, but it's not a noise any sane person would ever make, right? It's not a big cat noise. It's not any other.
It's like a wraith. It's like a ring wraith. It has
Yes,
that
exactly.
exact tone, you know?
Demonic, monstrous sound it keeps making, right? It yeets someone away from a fire and is gone in like almost instantly. Like
Yeah.
it's traveled over great distances very quickly, carrying like an 11-year-old boy, with
Yeah.
it.
Faster than
And
a
it's very
grown
quick and
adult.
very strong and very, very fast, like by
Yeah.
necessity.
Yeah, and
Yes.
much
Incredibly
quicker
fast.
than a fully grown adult is capable of running after it, you know?
Yes. One of these things was able to scare a mammoth off a cliff, or like it managed to like chase a mammoth off a cliff
Well,
and then like haul away all of its bones and stuff like that. So, and it has this like bone pile thing full of all this weird goop. Oh, and the black tar, right? When they find this
when they find the
the
sun's
furs.
skins, yeah, furs,
Yeah, they're covered in a black slimy goo, which is not something that any animal that naturally occurs in the prehistoric British Isles would make. It's a bit tar-like, but there's no tar anywhere in the movie. Um, so
you cut
this
out.
must be some weird thing that it's excreting. This is okay. Oh, this is some sort of goo that like excreting, right?
Yeah.
So I feel like it's very, very obvious that we're dealing with some sort of like supernatural or like fantastical monstrous creature, right? Indisputably, I would say.
Yeah, one we've seen it sort of like there's a giant like let's also be clear here. There's a giant pile of animal carcasses in the middle of the woods. And like the bones have been picked clean. There's blood and there's gore everywhere in this giant like den, right? Like it has made a home in this like patch of woods, right? We've seen that
Mm-hmm.
as well. It
Yes.
it has also completely basically just like destroyed a full-grown hunter, right? Like it has taken him and carved him from like clavicle to chin up his like out of nowhere up his body so that
Yeah.
his lower jaw split and he looked sort of like a fucked up version of the predator monster, right? Like
Yeah.
it is done.
Dealt some serious damage.
It has
Very
really
strong,
fucked them up
very quick, makes an inhuman screeching sound, excretes some sort of weird black goo,
and
is like
difficult to see.
killing people but not eating them.
Yes.
That's also important. So, with all that in mind, we finally get a glimpse of this monstrous creature. It's standing up in the fog, and then it like takes off what looks like its head, and you realize that it was just wearing a costume, and it's actually just a Neanderthal.
Yeah.
It's just
It's just a caveman. Cave woman, rather.
it's just a guy. It's just a Neanderthal guy, average sized adult Neanderthal.
Oh.
That's the twist. There's no demonic monster. It was just a Neanderthal dude.
Um
How do you guys like the twist? Isn't that cool? Isn't that like, oh, it's so subversive? Isn't
y-
that awesome?
yep. And this is the scene right where Berry Picker wakes up and kind of comes back to, see what's going on and watches it in the den, and
Mm-hmm.
Stray shows up and whistles to draw its attention, and then she comes up and disarms it as it's approaching Berry Picker. and that's
Yeah,
where we take it off, and it is a Neanderthal.
it's just a
It's
dude.
just, well, is it a
He
dude?
looks well. I mean, okay, it
I'm
looks
pretty
a
sure
little
it's
bit.
supposed to be a woman.
Oh, I actually don't know. I
I'm
didn't
pretty
get
sure
a
it's
woman.
because I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be a woman because there is later on a second one that is bigger and brawnier. So I think it's supposed to be a Neanderthal couple living in a cave, and this
Yeah,
is the woman.
I couldn't tell because it's wearing this big costume, and also this actually has the makeup that like the caveman guy in the Geico commercials has. This actually has like the broader cheekbones and the big brow, all the sort of stuff you might expect from a Neanderthal type person, or frankly a Stone Age person, because honestly Neanderthals and like Stone Age people didn't actually look a whole lot different. There's
Yeah,
some differences obviously, but the difference was not as stark as this movie presents it to be. Um, so I couldn't actually tell if it was supposed to be a woman because of all like the makeup and stuff like that. It very strong features. It was a handsome woman, if not, if nothing else.
yeah. No, I'm fairly confident I'm fairly confident that's a woman.
That
Which
makes it even worse.
yes,
So that's cool.
yeah. And yeah, yeah, Stray comes up and knocks the helmet off of it as it is approaching Berry Picker, and that's where we get
Hmm.
the scene where it looks them dead in the eye and
And makes a
shrieks like a
screech.
Nazgul.
Yeah. And then like what does it run away? I can't
Yeah, it
remember.
runs away and it's way
Yeah.
faster than them.
Yeah.
It's like it's insanely quick. And
Yeah.
this is so I'm gonna go off onto a little tangent here. When I was looking at the movie and worrying about whether, because the trailer looked okay, and I'm like, is this gonna be enough to like talk about, right? Yeah, kind of thinking there. And thought I had spoiled myself a little bit for this, so I'm looking at the comments on this Instagram trailer, and somebody goes, "Nice to see a skinwalker done well," right? And so I'm like, oh, okay, so this is like a skinwalker type monster, right? So like,
Shapeshifter type thing. No, no, it's not.
nope,
It's just a Neanderthal chick.
yep,
Yeah, so as many people have already reacted in the chat, this is lame as fuck. This is so
terrible.
lame. I could not believe how lame this is. Okay, and some people have already mentioned this. We'll talk about the ethical implications and the message and the themes of this story once we get the full scope. We'll get to that towards the end. But as a twist, this is awful. Man, first of all, it doesn't make sense. I think that needs to be made abundantly clear. All that stuff in the beginning was just misdirection. It was just lies. There are things that a Neanderthal person could not have done, but they did anyway because they wanted you to think it was a demon, only for the twist to surprise you.
Yeah,
It doesn't make any sense at all. Period. Also, it's just really stupid. I just want there to be a demon, man. Show me a cool demon monster.
it's
Be
so
creative. Have some sort of cool design like a Wendigo or something like it. Have fun. Make something interesting.
it's so difficult to fuck up like a bunch of prehistoric people with Stone Age tools being hunted by a supernatural monster have to fight the supernatural monster.
Yeah,
Like
I
that
mean,
that
and like
that you
supernatural
don't
doesn't
need
even. Yeah,
you don't even need supernatural. You just need, like, it could even just be a fucking like saber-toothed cat and you've got a good movie going for
yeah.
you there. Like,
Yeah, I that would have been okay with me. I do like the idea of it being some sort of supernatural creature. And by that I don't mean something that has like supernatural powers, if you know what I mean. Like it's
yeah.
not magic, but it is like this big demonic, scary, skeletal kind of creepy ass monster thing. That would have been cool. That would have been really cool. That would have been the only thing that redeemed the movie for me. Instead, it takes the worst possible direction after this.
Yeah. Well, and so like basically we're supposed to believe that, I guess, like, because with the mammoth, right? The
Yeah.
Neanderthals must have just somehow pushed it off the cliff or
Well,
tricked
chased
it
it off.
or chased
Chased
it
it off.
off the cliff. And this guy had no idea. Like, he couldn't look at that and go like, "Wow, it looks like it got hunted." He's like, "Well, I don't know what did this. Fuck. Oh my god,
Well, he,
something."
he thinks it was chased off the cliff. That's his theory. But also, we're going to find out that there's only really like two or three Neanderthals, maybe just two.
I think there's just
Can't
two.
remember. Yeah,
There's
there's
only
only
two.
two of them. I don't really believe two Neanderthals chased this mammoth off a cliff. so went plunging to his death. You know, if they did, good for them. That's impressive. But also, like, I think it takes a little more than that sometimes. Anyway, because you know, generally animals don't leap to their death, especially not smart ones like mammoths and elephants. Anywho,
Yeah.
so it wasn't a demon; it was just a monster the whole time. Now, then we get our first sort of ethical dilemma. Um, and this totally feels like the gender roles are completely reversed, in my opinion, but maybe it's just my bias, right? So we have two perspectives now because we only have two characters left. That's what we think anyway. We have Berry Picker Boy and Stray Main Girl. And Main Girl's like, we gotta go find this thing. We gotta go kill it. You know,
It's
this
a
is a
monster.
monster.
She keeps saying
It's
it's a monster, and it did shriek like a monster. So, like,
yes.
if you
And
were
it
in
did
the
kill
theater at
some.
this point going, okay, skinwalker-ish thing, maybe, like, it's, like, not really, like, you know, it looks like it's a Neanderthal, but maybe it's just, like,
Maybe.
maybe it's just, like, trying to imitate a person. Who knows? Like, maybe it's a thing that is copying whatever used to be here. Like, you could maybe, like, you might be at that point, because, like, that's where I was at this point of the movie, especially when after Stray and Berry Picker start chasing it, it ends up, like, they basically go, like, down a hill and then up, and as they come up the hill, it's the Neanderthal is so
All four
far
of
away from
them.
them that it's like,
One
how
of
the fuck? Like, it must have moved at like hyper speed to make it over there, and
it
it
moved like a Jedi in like the in the Phantom Menace. You know the way
yes,
they like that sort of thing. Yeah, so she's like, this is a monster. It killed Adam. It killed no, she says it killed Adam. He's like, we killed Adam. It's like, shut up. It killed Adam, you fuck. Like you ate it, but like
yeah,
it
she
killed
ate
Adam.
him, but yeah,
Yeah, so that like this is a monster. It did kidnap. It did like steal. It did kill a couple of you, right? And it did, you know, it all sorts of things. This is something you need to go fight and kill, or else it'll come back and kill you again. Why wouldn't it? He's like, no, it's just like us. It's like, shut up, dude. So they go chasing after it. They eventually trace it back to caves in the mountain that they were headed to anyway, right? So it's
yes.
living in caves. And they're like, okay, well, I guess we're gonna have to go in there and fight this thing.
Yet another example of them just going in with no fucking plan,
No
right?
plan.
Like, they
That's
have
worse
no,
than no plan. It's worse than no plan because there are two cave entrances and they split up.
yeah. They split. One goes in the one side, the other goes in the other side. They have no like game plan at all. They are just going to wander the caves until they find this thing that she thinks is a monster.
Yeah, and they're hoping to find the caves, like, you know, where this thing lives and like, you know, like if it, you know, if it's living in the caves, then they can kill it and take their caves. You know what I mean? Or
Yes.
like,
Well,
you know, it'll
if it's
it'll
living in
lead.
the caves, we have to start asking the question too of like, why is it eating everything in the woods? Like,
Yeah, yeah. I don't know. No idea. Just because we wanted a spooky sequence there, it's so stupid. So they find the caves, and there's two entrances, and they split up. Yes, they split up, even though like they're two like 15-year-olds going up against I don't know. They have this could be a whole tribe of Neanderthals
yeah,
for all
they
they
don't know how
know.
many are in there.
They have no idea. They don't know what's in this cave.
Even
But they
says he
split
even
up.
says too, the berry picker says to her, what if there are more of them, and they just never answer the question.
No. So they split up and they go into the different caves and they're wandering through the caves at night. Well, it's not at night. Actually, this is during the day. This will be important. They're wandering through the caves. It's dark in the caves, but because they want the scene to be spooky, there's like lightning that'll like light up the caves like from above, and it's like, are they inside the mountain? Why is there lightning coming through? Do these caves have sunlights,
There's
sunroofs? Like
sunroofs.
it's so distracting.
We
Anyway, lightning
install
is like
sunroof in this room. Good for reading.
the, the lightning is lighting up the cave for like ooh spooky sequence. They're wandering through the cave. Remember, they split up because they're retards, and so they're wandering through, and eventually I don't remember the exact order here, but she eventually finds the son of Adam. There he
Well,
is.
no, first she has a fight with the with a bigger bulkier
Guy.
Neanderthal
Right,
guy.
right, 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 right. Because and he tries to kill her immediately.
Yeah, he doesn't like he just immediately attacks. And so she's
Yes.
fighting, like he's basically strangling her. He's fucking
Mhm.
huge. He probably
He's
has
big.
muscles like a chimpanzee, like the kind of thing that like it slaps you on the back and you just buckle because they
Yeah,
are so dense and strong.
he's a big dude. He's a big dude, you know?
And
He's
he's
not like Andre the Giant big, but he's large.
yeah. And she is a 15-year-old,
Yeah,
modern woman, basically,
yeah.
up against this half monkey, half man
Fucked her shit
thing.
up. Yeah.
But she ends up winning, but not finishing him off. Like she manages to kill him and leaves him just like bleeding out with
Yeah, she
the
stabs
spear.
him with, like, the
She
little rock
leaves
stone
the
tool.
spear. She
Yeah.
she has the white magic spear with the runes in it, and she stabs him with the rock tool, and then stabs him again with the white spear, and then just leaves it
Yeah.
and goes further into the cave
Very
where now
stupid.
she's aware there's more than one because this is very clearly not the same guy,
Yep,
right?
yep.
But she doesn't take the spear with her.
No, she just
She
doesn't
brings
have a
that little
weapon now.
flint knife and keeps
Yeah.
going.
Yeah, this is like in Halloween where she drops the knife over and
Yeah.
over again. Like, motherfucker, keep the knife, please. Yeah, so she goes wandering and eventually she discovers
She discovers like
the
a
sun.
cozy little living room full of furs and like bedrolls and a campfire that
Mhm.
is burning. And
Yeah.
Adam's son is sleeping under the blankets. And he gets up and looks at her like he's all like he doesn't recognize who she is and like he's all nervous about like, oh my god, you found me. Like
Yeah.
what I
Then what happens to you? What do they say to each other? What does he say to her?
doesn't he call her a monster here? He calls her like
I
or
don't
no, he
remember
says, "Where's my dad?"
yeah.
It's like, well, I ate him. I don't know what to tell you, but
Basically, it's hard to remember some of the very specific lines that are said because they're speaking a different language. So, like, if they're speaking English, I might remember exactly how they said things. But it can be a little hard to remember specific dialogue details. But the basic gist is that she finds him in this cave, and he's like, "What? You killed the Neanderthal? They saved me. They were feeding me. They were trying to help us. How could you have killed him?"
yeah. Wow.
Yeah, we're gonna hold on. There's more to that. We're gonna dive into that in a minute. Eventually,
Berry
Berry
Picker
Picker Boy
has come
comes
through the
up.
cave and he
Yes,
finds the wounded Fred Flintstone just sitting there on the ground with the spear stuck in his back, right? And the Berry Picker boy picks up the spear and just stabs him a bunch of times over and over like a
yes.
pincushion.
Make sure he's dead. Double tap. I'm fine with that. Kill him. And so, and
I'd be
then
fine
eventually,
with it if he wasn't the one who was just like, but it's just like us. Like
yeah, yeah, exactly. He kind of flip flops a little bit. Maybe he's trying to put it out of its misery. Who knows? And then they I forget the exact order of events. They run into the woman, and there's like the woman Neanderthal that is.
Oh, Berry Picker comes into the room with the son and the stray, and he
Hmm.
sees what's happened. And the Neanderthal woman approaches him out of the back with a like an axe or like a hammer,
Trying to
basically
kill him. Yeah.
raised up. Nobody says anything. The stray and the son just stay there and watch in silent horror as she smashes Berry Picker in the head with this axe and kills him, and then smashes him a bunch more times because
Yeah.
she screeched at them in the dark, and so now like they confused it with hostility, right? She stole their child.
Hold on, hold on. We'll get back to the weighing up the sins of both factions in a minute, but let's get to the end essentially.
Yeah,
That's
okay,
like
yeah,
because we're
yeah.
not far from it. Well,
We're
yeah.
not, because then they
Go
throw some
ahead.
stuff on the fire. This cave starts to smoke up, and they're
Berry Picker is dead, by the
Yeah,
way,
Berry
killed by
Picker's
the
dead,
yeah, and so it's just son of Adam, who was the first person to be kidnapped
and the woman
from
who
around the
ate
fire
Adam.
at night. Yeah, and the woman who ate Adam. They set everything on fire in the room. There's a bunch of furs and stuff that light on fire with ease, and then they like climb out of like a hole in the rock, and they like a chimney, I guess, for
Yeah,
the
basically,
smoke.
they
This is a
climb
nice
out.
setup they have out here, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, look, it's almost better than my house. Shit,
So they
they got a
they
nice little
climb up.
three-bedroom cave.
Yeah. They climb up and they make their way out, and it's daytime. Remember all that lightning that was happening? It's just sunny again. Um, Ignore that. They're
And yeah,
back
they're climbing out
outside.
of the chimney. They're hacking and coughing because the smoke is coming up.
She's
Stray is
she,
looking down at the Neanderthal woman chasing them and going like, "Oh fuck, she's coming! Run, run, kid, run! You
so they
gotta
get out
climb
to
faster."
the top of the mountain, or
They get out
the
of the yeah. They
surface,
get out of the they
and
get out of the
then
chimney.
and then Neanderthal woman is trying to climb out through the rock, but she gets stuck for some reason.
Yeah, I don't know how she gets
I
stuck, but
don't know how.
she's
She's
much
not that
slimmer
big.
than the stray woman. So I'm not really sure how like the
She gets
stray
stuck.
gets out, but
Whatever.
the Neanderthal gets stuck. But then, as she's stuck, she starts screaming in a language that like they can understand, basically for the
No, they
kid.
can't.
She starts screaming his name. She starts screaming the kid's name.
Okay, well, but like I thought she was talking, and because there was no subtitles for it,
There's no
which
subtitles, but she's screaming the kid's name and holding her hand out, like "Help me!"
okay, yeah,
Basically,
okay.
yeah.
So she's saying his name and then other words that we don't understand as an
We don't understand,
audience.
but like you would expect that the kid probably does because he runs over to try
At
to
least
help
he
her.
knows. At least he knows the name, right? And so
Yeah,
the kid runs over and tries to help her, and like, oh, she's stuck. Come on, we gotta help her, right?
yeah.
And then favorite moment in the movie, because there's not many good ones. Um, Main girl just runs over with the rock and like stabs her
It
instead of
just
trying
kills
to
her.
help. Just kills her. I was like,
Kills her
fuck
right in
yeah,
front of him.
please kill him. Like I was so on her side. I was like, absolutely, fuck him up. Don't help this bitch. You know, she's killed so many of your people. Anyway, so she kills the Neanderthal woman, and then child of Adam is like, "How could you have done that? Like they were just trying to help. They were the good guys. How could you have done
And
that?"
then this is where we get the thematic dialogue of him screaming at the stray, "Monster, monster," and hitting
You're
it
the
like,
monster.
"You're a
Get it?
monster." Get it?
And
Because she
it's
ate his dad. She's the one who ate the dad and killed the people who helped. They invaded the land that didn't belong to them
yes.
and killed everyone who lived there and took their stuff.
Yeah. It's not subtle. We were the monsters the whole time. Oh my goodness. And as someone mentioned it a while ago, but this is like we're finally into that's the end of the movie essentially. There's a little monologue at the end. We'll talk a little bit about when we're wrapping up the themes and everything here. But yes, we were the monsters the whole time. Probably my least favorite trope as well. I can't stand it. It sucks so hard, but especially in this movie because nothing else about it works.
Yeah.
It's terrible. It's absolutely terrible.
Yeah,
So,
it is one of the
to be
when
clear,
the ending monologue implies also that like, well, I guess it's over now, so we're just gonna have to like repopulate the Earth. Me and the kid whose dad I ate. That's just how this is gonna go.
yeah, so they basically take over the caves of the Neanderthals they killed, obviously. And the last line I remember of like import was a line where it's like, "Well, what do we do now?" And the line she gives in voiceover is like, "I guess we'll have to try again." And so this is very much a modern person um grappling with their guilt about colonialism and
Yeah,
then projecting it onto Paleolithic people. It's really stupid, and I hate it so much. Well, let's talk about all the ways this is stupid. For one, the idea that the Neanderthals were just the good guys. Oh, and like, oh, they just felt threatened. It's like, okay, well, let's talk about what they did. They drew first blood. They were stalking them. They kidnapped someone. They kidnapped a child from the fire and ran away with him. And then the movie has the audacity, the fucking gall to pretend that, oh, they were just trying to help me. They fed me, they clothed me. And it's like, well, why didn't you guys come back the next day? Why didn't you be like, hey, why don't we go help the rest of my friends if you're going to help me? You kidnapped him in the middle of the night after shrieking like a fucking banshee. And you're like, oh, no, we're really the good guys? Fuck off. So you don't do that shit if you're like just trying to help. You know what I mean? You approach during the day and you'd be like, "Oh, you guys look like you're struggling. Here's some food or whatever." Or if you're threatened by them, that you just watch them from a distance. You don't kidnap one of their children in the night, you fucking idiots. Like so, fuck off with the whole they were the good guys the whole time. Second of all, they kill Adam Man. that you're stalking them in the night in this forest and scaring the shit out of them, and then one of them runs off to like face you, and you kill him, and so like you killed their main leader guy. First of all,
And the
where
father of the kid you kidnapped. Like,
yes. Yeah, someone asked, I think I missed it. How did Adam's face get messed up? Yeah, one of the Neanderthals beat him to death, essentially. They busted his face with probably like a rock axe or a club of some sort. Yeah, they murdered him, to be clear. Yeah,
well,
so
yeah, they grievously wounded him and then left him to die. And then his own tribe, led by a stray who didn't like him in the first place, takes it upon herself to kill and then cook and eat him. So, like,
yeah.
yeah,
Yeah, and so okay, you've killed they presume that you killed the son. What you really did was kidnap him. Not a whole lot better. And then you killed their main leader. And then because they're so freaked out, it's stupid the way it plays out, but like where the human characters start to turn on each other is because they're like, well, we need to make a sacrifice. It's stupid that they do that, but obviously they end up like hurting each other in the process because they're so freaked out. Remember, Neanderthals, this is all your fault also. You like
yeah,
you spurred all of this on by fucking acting like a demon and trying to terrify them into going away. You're like you're like there's something Scooby-Doo-ish about it. Like
yeah,
putting on a costume and trying to scare away these people, like trying to
yeah.
scare
It's like
them
when
away from the
somebody gets
doc.
killed because of that, it is your fault. Like,
Yeah. Yes. And so, and then they kill you back. It seems totally justifiable, honestly. And also, like, okay, if you're attacking them and like, I also don't believe that Paleolithic berry picker boy is going to have any sort of, oh my God, they're just like us. And it's like that's such a modern thing. These are Neanderthals versus humans. No one from this time period is going to be like, oh my God, is going to have some sort of universalist sort of moral perspective on other
yeah,
people's, like not even on other tribes. Like in this time period and even much later, tribal people called themselves people, and other people weren't even like really seen as human. Like the same moral rules did not apply to them at all, much less fucking Neanderthals. So that he would be like, oh my God, but they're just like us. What if we're the real monsters? It's like, that is not a perspective anyone from this time period would have. I'm sorry. Especially when they struck first. But the movie has this attitude that, like, oh, what were the Neanderthals trying to do? Well, they kidnapped one of us in the middle of the night to feed us because they actually want to help, but also simultaneously they're trying to scare the rest of us away because they're threatened. It's incoherent motivations, utterly incoherent. So when the humans get revenge and end up killing them, I'm like, yeah, fuck them. Those are your caves now. Damn right.
yeah. I
Fuck
mean,
them.
yeah, maybe if you had learned how to just be neighborly. I don't know. But it's real quick. Somebody was asking what happened to the pregnant lady and the dude who hurt his leg. When she snatches the pregnant lady away, this is one of the things that we get for one of the reveals that we get for why the Neanderthals are such good people. They've taken her to a cave, one of the caves, to a special room where they paint the walls with their hands in order to honor her because they realized she was pregnant. So these Neanderthals also are like far more sophisticated, you could say, than this hunter gatherer tribe in a way. Like they have this idea of burying and worshiping, like burying the dead and worshiping, some kind
Yeah.
of spirit, and treating the bodies of the dead
They're
with
better people than
reverence.
we are, is the sort
Yeah,
of attitude the movie takes. Yeah,
which
it's
is
terrible.
it's ridiculous because like this is just a time period where pretty much everybody would have had some sort of tribal ritual that sort of binds them together.
Yeah.
You know,
Like it is true that Neanderthals buried their dead and stuff like that,
yeah,
but so did human beings.
yeah. Human being, like the idea that like the human beings are the ones who are so easy, like so ready to resort to cannibalism and to
Hmm.
abandon their supposed morality
Values.
and values
Yeah.
is like, no, Neanderthals probably would have done the same thing in that same situation. It's not like these are like two completely different people.
No. Yeah, the whole like we are the real monsters the whole time thing, as someone said, is like I'm 12 and this is deep. Yeah, it's really cringe. It's really cynical. It's really naive. I hate it, and it's very much, especially this movie, especially because it takes place in Britain and it's made by British filmmakers, feels like a sort of guilt over colonialist thing and they're just projecting onto the past. It's really bad. It's a lame twist. It's not a good scary movie. There's nothing fucking scary about realizing that something you thought was this horrible monstrous demon thing is actually just some chick, you
Yeah,
know.
some brawny looking chick with
Yeah, it's so stupid. Like it's not scary, it's not compelling. The themes and messages are awful, like horrendous. Like it's insulting, honestly. It's insulting to the audience and this is a waste of money that they could this the money they spent on this movie. Now I don't know what the budget is. It's probably relatively low budget. I would say there's no way it's more than $5 million. I could imagine it's maybe one or two. Let's say it's $5 million. That money would have been better spent being burnt in a pit than making this movie. Movie fucking sucks.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. Honestly, there's like it was such a huge waste of time that like there were only a few people in the theater with me when I saw it, but as the credits started to roll, there was this one guy right in the front who just went, "That was fucking terrible." And like a lot of people just started going, yeah, I mean, he's got a
Murmurs
point.
of agreement,
Yeah,
yes.
like it's like I've never been in a movie theater where that happened, you know, where like everybody in the theater sitting there went, "Geez, what a terrible fucking movie."
I don't know why anyone I don't know why anyone would think, yeah, this will appeal to people. This is what people want to see. I was having a conversation recently because I think some people I see this happen a lot with especially with modern movies. They get genre confused with like archetypal stories and they think they're the same thing. Like for example, they think, "Oh, people would be interested in a prehistoric like Stone Age horror movie like set in the wilderness." And it's like, "Yeah, you're right." But it's like people aren't going to be interested in this story where like, oh, human beings were the real monsters and the people we thought were the demons chasing us were really just good people trying to do what's right. Like no one wants that story. You know what I mean? And I see this all the time with stuff like that, where it's like, oh, people want superhero movies, and it's like, yeah, well, they don't want ones where we're just degrading the main hero over and over and over again and humiliating them, and like using them as a vehicle to prop up other stupid characters with no flaws, stuff like that.
Yeah.
It's like that's not what people want. What people want from like a superhero movie is someone facing like near insurmountable obstacles to try to like stop evil in the world, and like learning to take responsibility and growing and becoming more heroic. Like that sort of stuff is what people want. It's not about the capes, it's about the types of stories that are usually associated with the capes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
like no one like people want like, oh, there's a monster out there and brave people have to like do their best to sort of fight and survive, and like maybe they do, maybe they don't, but like there's evil, there's an evil monstrous either it's evil or it's like the cruel indifference of nature, whatever it is, like is a threat out there and it's like an obstacle that needs to be overcome and needs to be faced and all that sort of stuff. Like that's what they want out of a movie like this. They don't
Yeah.
want like guilt over colonialism. Fucking stupid. And also like with the whole like sort of girl bossy elements of this also extremely forced. I
Yeah.
can't stand it, man. It's like this
It's
infection running through a lot of modern movies, and it's not even the big tent. It's not even just the big tentpole stuff. And this movie is the perfect example. There's the same sort of addiction to like subversive sort of like, oh, we need to challenge audiences and try to like teach them how to be better people and like face the guilt for sins of the past. And it's like, what if you just made a compelling horror movie about a monster in the woods?
when
You know?
and Jay in the chat is mentioning the reason why the hero's journey has stuck around for as long as it has, right, is because that is sort of the quintessential part of human nature, right? Is that like humanity is about rising up against the cruel indifference of nature or the evil of the world and surmounting it and building on top of it, and becoming a stronger person because of it. That's why all those myths and all those religious stories and scriptures and everything have that very similar through line, is because that's the sort of story that inspire, like that tells the story of the human race. You haven't done anything different here. You've just taken that story and made it bad, right? Like you haven't done
Turned
anything.
it upside
Yeah,
down.
you've turned
Yeah.
it upside down and without understanding why it exists, right?
Yeah.
Like there's a way to do it in a way that aligns with your particular political, your particular form of guilt if you really want to. But like,
Yeah.
and I had some hope for it even at the beginning of the movie where the older man is telling a story around the fireplace, and he's like, the berry picker lad starts talking about how, oh well, I could tell you about like all the great things we're gonna find in this promised land. That's
The
like
heroic, inspiring story. Yeah.
well, no, he's like, and the old man comes in and says like, oh, he needs to hear stories about overcoming hardship and obstacle, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like, and I'm like, yeah, I'm here for that, right? Like, I
Yes.
agree with him. And then
But it's almost like, yeah, sorry, sorry
yeah,
to
no,
cut
keep
you off,
going.
but it's almost like the story from the movie's perspective, that sort of inspiring story is just like a myth we tell ourselves that leads us to like kill and brutalize indigenous people. Like that's the implication of the movie, is that like those kind of stories are bad almost by virtue of what happens later in the story. That sort of heroic story about coming here and conquering the land and creating a civilization here, like that sort of stuff is just sort of a lie we tell ourselves. Like that's the implication of the movie, and it fucking sucks, man.
Yeah, it's terrible. It's
Has,
what a waste of a good premise.
yeah,
Like
that's
honestly,
partly the worst part is that like, man, it'll be impossible to do this premise at least for a few years now. Like, you know what I mean?
yeah.
Like what a waste, like what a waste of a good idea. I want to respond to some of the comments in chat. Topaz dude who says John Carpenter's the thing, but we are the real thing at the end. Yeah. More on that in a second, but let's respond to some of these super chats. Daily Dose, thank you, says I saw this and Miller's Girl yesterday, both films with equal writing quality, aka don't see Miller's Girl. For a film without nudity, it's definitely porn. I think I saw a trailer for that. It seems to be what's his name from like The Hobbit and Sherlock and other and
Oh,
what's his name?
Martin Freeman.
Yeah, him and Jenna Ortega in some sort of weird like like he has a crush on his younger student and it's like I don't know, some risque stupid romance thriller type thing. Didn't look very good. I'm sorry you saw that and I'm sorry it sucked. Good to know to avoid that one. None Your Business says, had a virtually identical experience with It Comes at Night, complete with some guy saying that was fucking bullshit when the credits started to roll. Yeah, it's pretty funny. I would definitely posit that It Comes at Night is better than this
Yeah,
quite a bit.
I would
But
agree.
I totally understand people's frustration with
Hmm.
that movie.
Same.
A big part of it comes from the fact that it's called It Comes at Night and then nothing comes at night. It's just fear is what comes at night. Aren't I clever? It's like, ugh. Man, that's not a great title, not a great marketing campaign, really makes it seem like a different kind of movie. But at least that had some decent writing to it
Fear and
compared to
grief
this
comes at night.
crap.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the PTSD comes at night. But yeah,
yeah.
I would agree with that. I did see that in the theater, and a lot of people left quite frustrated. And I do understand that frustration, but it is leaps and bounds, I would say, better than this one. Despite being a movie that is primarily concerned with theme.
Vibe, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this movie was actually awful. It's one of the worst movies I've seen in theaters in a while. Um, very, very disappointed. I expected this movie to be a shoe-in for like a decent to okay movie. I was worried when we were making
Yeah.
plans for this stream that it would be too okay and not really interesting enough to talk about. That I'll be like, yeah, it's like a 5 or 6 out of 10. There's not much to say. It's okay, but not great. That's what I was expecting because I feel like this premise should be so easy to make a decent movie with. Greatness obviously is something that would require a lot of effort and skill and creativity and all that sort of stuff. But like an okay movie, all you have to do is like have them make some not stupid decisions, show their process of survival a little bit better, not have them be utter retards, and have it be an actual monster that they have to kill and stab with a spear or do some sort of tricky thing to deceive at one point and then kill and then only a couple people survive, but they have some hope for the future or
Yeah,
something.
I mean, you could have done something quite similar to what happens in that Predator in Prey in that Predator remake movie, Prey, right?
Yeah,
Like it's not
honestly,
perfect by any
no,
means, but
probably not, but it's way better.
it is sort of this premise, right? Like a more primitive sort of hunter group has to fight a monster, right? Now, Prey has, you know, the action sequences and like all that stuff that kind of takes it a little bit in a more ridiculous direction. But you do that as a horror movie, and you've got a like solid foundation. You know,
Yeah,
it doesn't have to be
yeah,
a predator monster. It doesn't have to be tied into that kind of stuff. But like you could like you got a solid movie just by doing this as a
yeah,
survival horror where a dad is looking for his son in a
yeah.
hostile environment, and he has to, you know, work,
Fight a monster,
work to fight a monster, right? It writes
and
itself.
yeah,
It's
it's
so
it's
easy.
so simple. It's so simple, but like they can't do it. They can't help themselves, but try to like pull the rug out from everything and make a story about how humans really suck. Almost like this aversion to making stories about humans defeating monsters at all. You know what I mean? It's kind of
Yeah.
funny. Oh, I wanted to bring this up because I was looking a little bit into the movie. This is a first-time director named Andrew Cumming. I hope he never makes anything again, or at least that I never have to see it. Um, he said in some interview that he was really inspired. The two movies that were mentioned in the interview is that him and the writers and a lot of the people making the movie all big fans of Alien. It's like, okay, now imagine, if you will, the movie Alien. I assume most people in the chat have seen it. Imagine Alien, but it turns out that the alien was actually just like an innocent monster defending its homeland, and we are the real bad guys for killing it. Would anyone like Alien if that's what it was about? Fucking no. Like
No,
what how can how
that's
can you how can you watch Alien and be like, "Oh, that's one of the best movies of all time and an inspiration for what I want to do with my movie," and then do the opposite? Really? You learned none of the good parts from Alien. You have people making relatively smart decisions. You have interesting dynamics between the characters. It's well shot. You have a genuinely cool, well-designed monster that's just this like cruel indifference of nature type force that's killing everybody, and we got to defeat the alien and survive. And there's one person that survives. And you even have like the lone female survivor trope. You could do that in this movie too if you want.
yeah.
I'm fine with that. Everyone's fine with that. People would have really liked it. But like, if the alien was really the poor innocent victim in all this, no one would like that movie. You wouldn't like that movie, Mr. Filmmaker. You wouldn't like it. You'd be like, yeah, that wasn't
That
really it.
was
You wouldn't
yeah.
be talking about it decades later.
It'd be Alien if the good guys in Alien were, or the point of Alien was that the people who are like, no, we have to make sure that we don't kill them all. We have to like preserve them because, you
Yeah,
know, if they were the one, if their message was the one that was like the correct view, right? In quotes,
yeah,
you know, it, or if Jaws was about like going out to kill this shark, and the main, you know, like there's the Richard Dreyfuss character is just like, no, we can't kill it. Like we're just encroaching on its territory, and that and
yeah,
his perspective is shown to be the correct one, and it is
yeah,
a bad thing to have killed the shark that ate a
yeah,
child, right? Like that's
yeah.
that's what
Hey,
we're looking at here. Or if the shark took off its mask and revealed that actually it's just a
there's the
guy
dude.
who
Yeah,
wanted the
it's not
beach
like the
to
only thing I would
himself.
say is people are like, it actually. Let's see, where was the comment I'm looking for? Hold on. Dude. Not even a monster, just a dude in a monster suit. Yes, that is one of the worst things about this movie, but important to remember that that dude in the suit does behave monstrously in this movie. Like, there's still monsters in any sort of like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
archetypally in this story, this something is picking them off one by one and stalking them and
And
terrifying them.
screeching like a fucking Nazgul.
Yeah, and it's like,
Like,
no, and they probably deserve to die, and that's fine, honestly. Fuck you, movie. Yeah, so
oh,
this
he did
movie
say
really.
Bone Tomahawk too, which have you seen Bone Tomahawk?
Yes, but so long ago I barely remember it.
I did not enjoy that movie at all.
Yeah, I think that might be a hot take. I think a lot of people do like it, but I don't remember being all that uh, wowed by it.
Yeah.
I'd like to rewatch it at some point.
Yeah,
But
I might have to try it again at another point. But yeah, I was not a huge fan. I did not enjoy
it
that
would be
movie.
better than this. I know that much. Oh, and the other movie he mentioned was like, oh, while we were developing this movie, because apparently this is a movie he's been trying to get made for a while, um, was The Witch. And I'm like, oh, cool. So you like good movies, but you learn none of the right lessons from any of them. Like, Imagine if The Witch was like this movie. Like the witches were just good feminists in the woods who were just trying to do the
Yeah.
right thing, you know? Like, that would be so bad. Like,
Yeah,
I
it'd be
don't know.
very lame. And Daily Dose is right in that I would definitely say Bone Tomahawk is better than this. Like
Oh, yeah.
leaps and
And it's
bounds.
most
Again,
movies are better than
most
this.
movies are better than this. So even though
And
I
I'm
wasn't a huge fan, like I'd rather rewatch that than this
oh,
ever again,
I never
honestly.
want to see anything from this movie ever again. I hope it dies in obscurity. I hope no one sees it. And I hope that fucking morons who wrote this story never have to inflict their bad writing on anyone else ever again. I think the movie really is kind of not just bad in an inept sort of way. I just think like the message is actually quite insulting and stupid and pathetic, and I don't like it at all. Don't I wouldn't recommend anyone watch it except to like know how not to do a story like this, I
Yeah.
guess.
That would be the only way. And I don't think it's even really worth that. You could just watch our stream and learn the lessons of how to do this movie properly instead. Which, we may not know all that much, but we know we could have done better than this.
Yeah. Actually, maybe I would say to some people out there, if they're aspiring filmmakers, maybe you should check out this movie, and I'll tell you why. If this type of premise intrigues you, I find, and I've often found in my life, that a bad example is more motivating creatively than a good example. Obviously, you see a good movie and you're like, man, I want to make movies like that. But I find bad examples more creatively motivating because it gives you that feeling of like, fuck, I could do that.
Yeah.
And maybe you couldn't, but maybe that little inspiration is
It's
what you
what
need to
pushes you.
actually
Yeah,
get
maybe that's
started.
what you need to
Exactly.
get started, and it pushes you over, and you end up
Yeah.
doing it, and it
That
ends up
feeling of
better.
like, well, I don't know what I'm doing at all, but fuck, I could do better than that.
Yeah.
And you probably could. I believe in you out there
I do.
listening
Me
to
too.
this.
I,
Yeah, maybe you don't know anything at all about filmmaking, but you want to start, right? You could do better than this. I'm sure you could.
yeah. Hey, so let's talk real quick about what your theory is as to what the black goo on the furs is, because that is one thing that is literally never revealed.
Oh,
Um,
I don't know. Tar, something
Tar.
stupid.
My theory
Yeah.
was paint, because they have all those airbrushed hands on the side of the cave, and I was like, oh, maybe it's like the paint that she was using to paint her hand, paint around her hand in the ritual room that they have in the cave. Uh, but it never goes anywhere. It's only there basically to misdirect you into believing that it is indeed a Wendigo of some kind, right? Like some kind of
Yeah.
monster
Some
that
sort of
lives in the woods.
glue for a costume, like someone said in the chat. Jay said
Yeah,
in the chat, like some sort of tar. I don't know if there's tar pits around in this time. It's like, I don't know, like resin from some sort of like thing that was burnt. I don't know. Doesn't matter. It's
yeah.
just misdirection.
It's
It's
yeah,
just lame.
it's pathetic. Really, like just a
It's
really
not. It's
bad
not.
movie.
Yeah, and it's not even the type of movie because often you find when you go into this sort of like indie artsy horror arena, you might find movies that are like well made, but the moral of the story is kind of insulting or stupid or naive or like I'm 14 and this is deep, but everything else about it is like, there's some good craftsmanship happening here. This movie doesn't even have that. It's rather amateurish. The music is really insistent, but not very effective. The acting is fine at best. The casting is bad. The editing is pretty bad. Cinematography is rather uninspired and at times actually pretty awful. The writing for the characters is bad. All of these things together. It's just not good.
Yeah.
Not good
Well,
at
and
all.
did we talk about the strangeness of them deciding to go with a multicultural cast for a tribe of primitive warriors bound
Yeah,
together
I
by
mean,
similar features, perhaps?
yeah, you would if they're going for grounded realism and historical accuracy, which they
Clearly.
nominally are in some respects, you would expect all these people to be of the same sort of ethnic group, and they're not. There's the one character who's the stray, but she almost looks more like some of the other ones than what I mean. Like
Yeah.
she doesn't look really distinctly much different than anybody else. She looks quite a bit like the mother, who's pregnant. She looks more like her, You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
like if you want to have her be the outsider, like a stray they picked up, I guess, from a neighboring tribe way back, years ago or something like that, maybe she could look slightly different. But, you would expect this group realistically to all at least be of the same ethnicity, and they're not, which is like, well, you don't even have that. You don't even have that little detail to get right. It's like they look too modern, they're too diverse for the sake of what would make sense in the story. Small things, if everything else were great, I wouldn't care about at all. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
and one
I would
the only evil one is the only one who is very distinctly like Eastern European or is like Northern European looking. You know, of course, the guy who's like exists to just be a naysayer. We have to throw
I
that in
didn't
there.
I didn't notice that didn't distract me at all.
And it
But
didn't
yeah.
just. I wouldn't say it distracted me necessarily. It's just one of those things that you sort. I'm like, okay, sure, of course. You know, that's what we're doing. Not surprising.
Jen says Barry Picker is going to be in the FX series prequel to Alien. Great, cool. I didn't wasn't really impressed with his performance at all. But hey, you know what? Maybe it was bad direction. Maybe he'd be good in the
Yeah,
Alien show.
maybe that willing
Who
this
knows?
this is a poor way to judge somebody's performance. I think there's
Yeah,
not a lot to work with.
the older I get, the more I usually blame poor performances on the director than the actor themselves, unless you see enough of them to know that, oh, well, you're never good, actually, like
Yeah,
Gal Gadot or something.
yeah,
So, Gal Gadot has, as far as I can tell, never delivered a good performance in anything. So I'm not convinced it's the director's fault with her. But for a lot of other people, it's like they turn in a bad performance. I'm like, but I know you've been good in other things. It's probably the director's fault or the material, all that sort of stuff.
yeah, yeah.
Alien as a franchise is fucked enough as it is anyway. True. I
Mm,
wish they would just let it die. Um,
can't do
but they
that.
never, but they don't let anything die these days. They just announced within the last month or so, they announced a new Jurassic Park movie, and it's like it hasn't even been long since the last one. We're just doing it again. Like
Is it a wait? Is it another Jurassic World or is it a rebooting?
I don't know. I don't know, but it's another one. I,
Ugh,
I I I don't know if they're using the word world or not, but
no.
or park or whatever. But
Stop it with the Jurassic. I really want to just rewatch Jurassic, like the original Jurassic Park now.
yeah.
Like,
That movie's great. So I watched this movie yesterday, and I was like, "Wow, that was awful." One of the worst movie going experiences. Well, easily the worst movie going experience I've seen. Or I've had, that is, this year, and I've seen some stinkers in the movie. I saw Night Swim in the theater. I saw Wonka. Those were both stinkers.
oh
But this,
man,
ooh, a doozy. It's pretty bad.
that's
It's another
rough.
Jurassic World, they're saying. Who saw the dog shit Aliens 4K they're releasing franchise can't get? I haven't seen that. I'm not. I don't. I'm not as up to date on. I don't follow like the new physical releases and 4K re-releases and stuff like that. I don't follow that the way some people do. I mean, I have a decent like physical collection, but like I don't. I'm not as into that world as some people are.
Yeah, I've heard people defend Wonka, as just just a goofy little fun time. Don't take it too
Yeah.
seriously, kind of thing. And
Short version of Wonka is that it is worse than the 70s movie in every conceivable way. It's a bad prequel in that like story-wise things happen that don't line up with the original, but it's not even especially fun on its own because it's a musical and the songs are bad. So,
that's
hey,
really
here's
the
here's
problem, right?
here's a pro tip. Here's my advice to anyone. If you're thinking about seeing a movie and you can't tell it's a musical from the trailer, but then you hear that it's a musical, don't go see it. Any musical movie that has to hide the songs, any musical movie that doesn't pitch itself to you on the strength of its singing and dancing is not worth seeing. Don't bother.
Yeah. Avoid Wonka and Mean Girls like the plague.
Yeah. If they're scared of selling it on the musical aspect, it's not going to be a good musical, and you're going to have to suffer through Timothy Chalamet's like aggressively auto-tuned singing, where he's not very good, and they have to auto-tune his voice, so there's no like soul or life in it. Like Gene Wilder is not really a singer either, but his vocal performance is actually quite decent, and it has some charm to it. partly because of little imperfections and stuff like that. That's like the magic, when you iron that out with auto tune and you get someone who can't really perform, who's not belting it out, who's just kind of like quiet singing into a mic 6 inches from his face. It's not going to be a good musical. All right. Also, the songs are just lame. It's not good. Don't go see Wonka. It's not worth it. Just go watch the original.
If you
It's
haven't
much
seen it for
better.
a while, like you get to
It's a lot of fun.
get to re-experience that. It's always a good time.
Yeah. Not a
Yeah.
lot of I haven't seen really many good movies in the theater so far this year, though it was nice. Someone mentioned, I think it was Topaz a while back, when we were talking about the like, oh, we were the monsters the whole time. I think he said something to the effect of, "This is why I mostly watch old movies these days." True. If I weren't doing this for streaming and stuff like that, I wouldn't have watched a lot of these movies. After this movie, I needed a palate cleanser, so last night Jen and I watched Pirates of the Caribbean, the first one. Man, what a
Good
film. What a
choice.
picture. So much fun. A lot of great stuff in that movie. And it's the kind of sort of archetypal story in a lot of ways. There's some things I don't like about it, but for the most part, it hits all the beats you want from a movie like that. Swashbuckling adventure film.
And the music is
Great.
fucking fantastic. Like
And the music. Yeah,
it's a really good score.
it's
It's
good.
one of Johnny Depp's, like I mean, you see why Johnny Depp let that turn his performance, like literally every performance he's done, he did after
Tense.
that
Yeah,
into that one because it's really
yeah.
strong. It's a really good performance.
Dunny in the chat says, I saw One Life the other week and that was great. Yes, I've heard many recommendations of that, including from Mahler and Drinker and people of that sort. No one's had anything bad to say about it. Unfortunately, is not out in America yet. Don't know why. One of those things happens from time to time where it won't be out for quite a while. But when it does come out, I'm very excited to see it. I understand that it's about there's a famous guy who saved a bunch of Jewish people during the Holocaust, and it's
Oh,
about
okay.
who's played by Anthony Hopkins, who's one of our greatest living actors. And so, yeah, I'll check out that.
Yeah, me
That sounds
too.
great.
I watch almost anything with Anthony Hopkins in it, honestly,
Yeah, except for Rebel Moon.
except for Rebel Moon.
Yeah,
That's yeah.
yeah. So,
Well,
what have
why
we
would I
learned?
watch Rebel Moon yet? The director's cut's not out.
True. The true, real, pure artistic
The
vision
4 hour
has
part one of
been.
the of
Ah,
Rebel Moon, before
uh,
the 6.5 hour director's cut of part two drops, a year after part two.
oh God, Zack Snyder, you silly goose. What are you doing? So, in conclusion, what have we learned today, Hugh?
Well, we've learned that the Scots just don't have that dog in them, I think.
uh, poor, poor drinker. Yeah, yeah. This was
Yeah,
not a
exceptions always to the rule. Uh,
yeah.
I'm sure
Don't got
Drinker
that
could.
coffee.
I'm sure Drinker could make a much better movie than
Oh,
this.
he's working on a movie, isn't he?
I think he is.
I think it's. I believe. I don't have all the details, so this might be partly wrong. I'm pretty sure it's a feature film based on one of his
One of his
books.
books. I've read
Yeah.
one of his books, and you know what? I liked it. I think he's got a pretty solid grasp of what makes those kinds of stories fun. So
Yeah.
I'd definitely check that out.
I haven't read them, but if it's the kind of movie like I've seen some stills and stuff like that. If it's like a sort of action thriller, kind of maybe pulpy sort of
Yeah,
airplane
that's
book action thriller, I'd
that's
be down for that.
exactly what they are, and they are
Yeah.
a good version of that.
Nice.
They are
Yeah.
fun.
So I would absolutely trust him to do better than this guy Andrew Cumming, because I hate the whole thought process behind this movie. Like, oh, we think there's a demon out there in the woods, but really it's just a poor, indigenous, innocent Neanderthal who's just trying to defend himself, even though he's acting like a monster himself. And we were the bad guys for killing them. How are we going to live with the guilt of wiping out the Neanderthals?
Well,
Oh my god.
what we're gonna do is fuck the woman who ate our father. I think that's the plan, right? Like that's all we've got going for us. We're gonna repopulate the entire British Isles, with this one child. Like that's the other thing too. Is that like, are we expected to believe that these were the only two Neanderthals living in this area, and now they're all gone, or like, are these two gonna be defending themselves against waves of other angry Neanderthals? Like what?
Who knows? Who's to say? Maybe they'll kill a mammoth together and then they'll be set for like a couple months. Even though they probably have no idea how to preserve meat for long periods of time, and so a lot of it would spoil anyway, because they don't seem too competent at that sort of basic elements of hunting and gathering. You heard me. None your business. Thank you for the $10. Says your guys' stream on Doctor Sleep versus The Shining really turned my opinion on The Shining completely around. Does that mean you didn't like it before?
Oh,
Was wondering if you'd
interesting.
be interested in covering the lighthouse at some point. I kind of hate it. Well,
Oh,
I guess
wow.
now we have to cover the lighthouse so we
I'm
can
down.
convince none of your business that it's great. I really like the lighthouse. Um I'm
I'm
very excited for Dr. Eggers' new movie Nosferatu, which I believe comes out later this year. I want to say November, but I don't remember exactly.
Did you say
Huge.
Dr. Eggers?
What is that? What I said?
I think
Dr. Eggman.
Dr.
Um,
Eggman's new movie.
yeah,
No, it's
Robert Eggers.
yes.
As Dr. Robotnik. Yeah, he's got a new movie coming out. It's pretty good. I like all his movies so far. He's only made 3, but I like all of them quite a bit. So
Yeah, we
he's
could do a
he's
Robert Eggers review here. I'm down for that.
that would be great. That might be a lot to cover in one stream, but I wouldn't mind it. The Witch would be, if you're looking for the antidote to a movie like this, probably the first example that comes to mind is probably The Witch.
Yeah, I would watch The
Obviously,
Witch.
it's not as old, in terms of its setting, but it'll probably scratch that itch a lot better of like people in the
Historical.
past dealing with a sort of supernatural foe in the woods. Much better film. Daily Dose says that Drinker's working on a short film, not a feature film. So he's gonna
Yeah, hey,
upload that to his
good for
channel. So
him.
that's pretty cool.
I'll check it out. I think that's a solid start. I mean, if he
Absolutely.
does it as a proof of concept and gets that thing rolling into its own little studio, I think he would probably make a pretty, given the way that his mind works. And yeah, I mean, I read the book that he has with the zombies in it, which was
Which one was that?
Dark Harvest is I think that's what it's called. Dark
Gotcha.
Harvest. It's based on a Ural Mountain incident. I think I might have talked to you a little bit
Yeah,
about that.
you told
Yeah,
me about that.
it's it
Yeah,
takes that that famous incident and goes in a zombie direction with it, which is fun. Like it's a fun zombie action thing. As much as you can do a fun zombie thing. Now with zombies being where they are. So
yeah,
I did enjoy it. I enjoyed it
nice.
enough to finish it, and that doesn't happen with a lot of books. Sometimes I'll
Yeah,
get started and be like, no, not worth my time. But that
yeah.
one I managed to get through, and I enjoyed it enough. So I would definitely be interested in watching what he wants to do.
Yeah, I'm always rooting for any YouTubers who make any films and stuff like that. Even if even if I don't like their work at all, if it's someone like High Top, he's working on some sort of what is it? I think it's a really ultra low budget feature fan film about Robin or something like that.
Oh yeah, I think he is.
You know what? And it's like, you know what, High Top, I hate your videos so much. They drive me crazy, and I don't really respect a lot of your critical opinions, but I'm always rooting for YouTubers trying to make films and stuff. Like good for
Yeah,
you. You get out there, you
yeah.
you do what you can. I'm rooting for you.
Mr. Ralph the Movie Maker, I think, has even made a couple low
Has he?
budget.
Has he
Yeah,
made any?
yeah, I think
Okay.
so. I think he has.
Well, maybe
I'm
maybe we'll
pretty
check
sure
him
I've
out at
seen
some
a
point.
couple of them, and they're very like like the kid in film school who wants to be Christopher Nolan kind of thing.
Uh, let's see. Do some streams on some older Kino, I say. That you know what? That is a great idea. We've been thinking for a while about how to sort of do that other than to just pick random good movies, which is something we might just do anyway.
Yeah.
One thing that we have planned in the future is we want to talk quite a little bit about either one or both of these, the AFI Top 100 list or the BFI Top 250 list, which the AFI list is the best American films of all time with an asterisk next to American, and the BFI list purports to be the best 250 movies, greatest films of all time. So we thought, you know what? I've always found the subject of like determining what the greatest films of all time or like what the canon of films are,
Hmm.
like an interesting process, an interesting prospect. So we'll look at those and see what critics and the like declared some of the greatest movies of all time and see if we agree or disagree. I've watched maybe about half of the AFI Top 100 list and far fewer of the BFI, the more international one. But I've seen quite a few of them, and I know there's some that definitely think deserve the hype, and some that don't. So there could be some interesting streams in that.
And I like the idea of going through, a particular year, for example, like 1975 or something, and then picking some of our favorites of that year and discussing
Yeah,
those.
we got some ideas for streams in the back pocket if there's nothing good out to talk about, which I imagine there might be quite a bit of this year, as this will be a slow year because of the strikes. There won't be as much released as in previous years, so we'll have a little less to talk about. So maybe we'll go back into the past, talk about some great films that either, you know, do deserve the hype or don't deserve the hype. I guess we'll find out. That's something we have planned in the future. We won't be streaming next week because Hugh's family's visiting him for his birthday. His birthday
Indeed.
boy. So no stream next week, but the week after that, and barring any sort of events that come up, every Sunday forever until we're all dead and the heat death of the universe happens. So join us for
Whichever
more in
comes
the
first.
future. Whichever comes first. Yeah. Thank you guys for hanging out. This is actually a relatively short one. I was thinking about how short this was compared to some of our other streams, and I realized that part of the reason for that is how empty this movie is.
There's really,
Isn't
like,
that
it's funny because it's only about an hour and 40 minutes long, right? But it feels much longer because of how slow and drawn out some of these
yeah.
scenes are, and so little happens. There's like there's a couple of scenes where they're wandering through the woods and getting lost in a circle, where it's a very slow pan around to
Yeah.
all of them just staring and looking at stuff, and then
Yeah.
like
They do
it'll
that at
slowly
campfires as well.
transition.
Yeah.
Yeah, it'll slowly transition to them just kind of walking, and then it'll do another one that shows them all just standing around looking at things, and it's like, okay, but we're not moving forward here. Like, at least one of these could have just been cut, like we don't really
There's a lot
need
of
that.
time wasting. It's very dull. Where it really picks up in terms of like, okay, things have happened and we have meat to chew on now, is when we find out the demon is just a Neanderthal. Because like that's quite a bit into the movie, but there's so little going on before it. Man, Hollow,
I mean,
dude.
yeah,
It's,
talking
it's
about it really kind of brings it into perspective. Where I'm like, yeah, we covered everything, and we did
that's
it
it.
in pretty excruciating detail, I would say.
Honest, honestly, yeah. I think it's one of those movies. I think I mentioned this at the beginning. That's bad in a number of ways, and that like the message is insulting, all that other stuff I've mentioned. But one of the other ones is that most of it is just really dull. It's boring too, on top of everything else. Oh, it's an unholy combination of badness, and we wouldn't recommend you go see it. But
No,
thank you very much for hanging out and
you cut off there at the
talking
end.
with us or
Okay.
chatting with us, hearing our perspective on this new film. We appreciate you. Oh, thank you all for hanging out. Listen to
Yeah.
us chat about this piece of shit movie.
Yeah, and thank you for
We
the happy
appreciate it.
birthdays in the
Thank you
chat,
for the
bros.
super
I
chats.
appreciate that,
Yes.
and for the super chats.
If
Y'all,
this
y'all
empty
are real
movie made
ones.
the stream short, you should talk about my bank account. Heyo. But all right. Thank you, folks, for tuning in. Short one today. Hope you enjoy the rest of your Sunday. Like I said, we won't see you next Sunday, but we'll see you the one after that. Have fun watching the Super Bowl if that's your thing, or whatever it is you other foreign people do in the rest of the world. Have fun doing that, I guess.
Yeah, have fun not watching, and have fun not watching Travis Kelsey propose to Taylor Swift at the
Oh my
50
God,
yard line.
I swear to God, if that happened, that'd be the best thing to ever happen to the NFL if that happened.
They win, and they just
In terms of views,
they take
yeah,
off the mask. They go
cut to her
full
semi-views.
WWE.
All right. Goodbye.
John Mayer
Goodbye,
comes
friends.
out and smashes Travis Kelsey over the back of the head with his guitar at the end, and we have a whole thing to spin us into next season.
Jake Gyllenhaal is just sitting in the stands, looking on, silently observing.
Oh my gosh!
All right.
Yeah, are we gonna go see Jake Gyllenhaal's Roadhouse?
I haven't seen the original, so I wasn't planning on it. But
Oh boy,
we'll see.
that's gonna be a.
That'll be something. All right. Goodbye, friends. For real. We'll see you next time. Toodaloo.
Bye.